Chapter 504. Su Qing-sang shook her head and said, "No, I came with a friend." After that, they didn't say anything else. Su Qing-sang was wearing a bathrobe, but her clothes were disheveled. She felt very uncomfortable, thinking about how to end the situation. Zhang Yiqian frowned at the awkwardness on her face. He was about to say something when someone knocked on the door. Su Qing-sang and Zhang Yiqian looked at the door at the same time. They both thought that the other person had returned. Zhang Yiqian glanced around. He couldn't hide in the wardrobe anymore. There was a small window in the bathroom, but he couldn't get through it. Su Qing-sang looked anxious as well. Under such circumstances, where could Zhang Yiqian hide? Zhang Yiqian was about to go to the bathroom when Su Qing-sang heard Shi Mengwan's voice. "Why did you lock the door?" "I didn't lock it just now." Su Qing-sang was relieved to hear Shi Mengwan's voice. She glanced at Zhang Yiqian to tell him that it was okay. She turned to open the door for Shi Mengwan. As soon as the door was opened, she pulled Shi Mengwan in. She moved so fast that Shi Mengwan didn't have time to react. Qing-sang, Shi Mengwan saw Zhang Yiqian when the door was closed. She gasped, then turned to Su Qing-sang with her eyes wide open. This is what Jinyao's uncle, Zhang Yiqian." Su Qing-sang pointed at Shi Mengwan. "This is Shi Mengwan, my friend. Nice to meet you." Zhang Yiqian was quite calm. He greeted Shi Mengwan like this. "Nice to meet you." Shi Mengwan blinked and looked at Su Qing-sang without saying a word. "Nothing. I just happened to meet him." Hua Jinyao didn't allow Su Qing-sang to tell Shi Mengwan what Zhang Yiqian had done. Surprisingly, Shi Mengwan didn't want to keep asking. Su Qing-sang also forgot to ask Shi Mengwan why she took so long to make a phone call. Normally, she would have noticed that something was wrong with Shi Mengwan. With Zhang Yiqian there, Su Qing-sang and Shi Mengwan didn't want to go into the bathroom again. The two of them had just started bathing and wanted to stay a little longer. Su Qing-sang looked at Zhang Yiqian, then at Shi Mengwan. "Mengwan, shall we go back to our room and get some rest?" "Sure." Although they all wore swimsuits when they soaked in the hot spring, it was really embarrassing to have such a big man standing next to them. "Then you." Both of them looked at Zhang Yiqian. The hot spring room and their room were on opposite sides of the club. If they wanted to go back, they had to go through a corridor and then a small courtyard. If they left now, what would happen to Zhang Yiqian? Zhang Yiqian glanced at Su Qing-sang, then went to the bathroom. The window was so small that no one could climb out of it. He was in too much of a hurry just now and forgot to look for the way. He looked around and suddenly had an idea. "Don't worry about me. If you want to leave, then leave." Zhang Yiqian stood there without moving. Su Qing-sang glanced at him and finally believed that he would handle it well. Shi Mengwan was a little confused, but she didn't ask further. The two of them brought their clothes into the small room and quickly changed. Su Qing-sang was still thinking about how Zhang Yiqian would leave later. However, when they came out, Zhang Yiqian was already gone. Su Qing-sang and Shi Mengwan looked at each other. They didn't hear the door open. They didn't know where Zhang Yiqian was. Since Zhang Yiqian wasn't here, the two of them went back to their own things. They changed again and went back to the hot spring. This time, those people didn't come looking for them. Zhang Yiqian didn't come back either. The two of them could quietly soak in the hot spring. Shi Mengwan was soaking in the hot spring, enjoying the steam. She couldn't help but ask curiously, "What kind of uncle is this? He looks so young. He looks like he's in his 30s at most." He's the son of Hua Jinyao's great-aunt. His great-aunt wasn't young when she gave birth to him, so he's about the same age as Hua Jinyao. "I see." Shi Mengwan nodded. "He's quite handsome. You like him? How about I introduce him to you?" "No need." Shi Mengwan thought of her phone call with Zhan Haoze. The two of them didn't say a word. They just stayed silent. He didn't speak, so she didn't know what to say. She should have hung up the phone, but she didn't want to. Not only did she not want to, but she also felt that listening to Zhan Haoze's breathing was also very calming and reassuring. Therefore, although they talked on the phone for a long time, they didn't really talk much. Even so, Shi Mengwan only believed in Zhan Haoze. As for other men, she really didn't want to talk about them. Su Qing-sang knew that even if she didn't say it, so she didn't ask. After soaking in the hot spring, they rested in the room of the club for the night. When they got up the next morning, the manager of the club brought them breakfast. He apologized again and again for disturbing them the day before. Su Qing wasn't a person who wouldn't let others off easily. The other party showed enough sincerity, so she wouldn't make things difficult for them. However, she still had to pretend that she was letting him off lightly for Hua Jinyao's sake. In fact, she was more or less curious. Where on earth had Zhang Yiqin been hiding? After all, the other party had sent so many people to look for him, but he disappeared just like that. Thinking about it, it was really impressive. After all, when they went back to their room yesterday, they also observed that there was no more noise. And then they couldn't even hear the sound. That meant that Zhang Yiqin must have left safely. After leaving the club and getting into the car, Shi Mingwan patted Su Qing on the shoulder and said, "You're good. You're becoming more and more like a rich lady." She was talking about how Su Qing coincidentally ran into the man with a mustache in the yard last night when she left the club. Shi Mingwan was hiding to make a phone call, so she naturally didn't know who the man with a mustache was. But Su Qing knew. She looked at the man with a cold face. Although there was no dissatisfaction in her eyes, her expression was definitely not good. It seemed that the man with a mustache didn't find Zhang Yiqin. His expression didn't change, but she could faintly see the anxiety in his eyes. "Thank you for the compliment." Su Qing didn't want to be like this, but she had to keep acting, so that those people wouldn't think about what happened yesterday. More importantly, Zhang Yiqin should have passed the test safely. In fact, she believed that even if she wasn't there, Zhang Yiqin should have passed the test safely. Su Qing didn't want to think about it anymore. She had made up her mind to tell Hua Jinyao sometime. She couldn't have a third. She had met Zhang Yiqin a few times in private. Although they didn't do anything, she still wanted Hua Jinyao to know. Su Qing had been in Rome City for a long time, but she hadn't been to many places. She wanted to focus on keeping sure Mengwan company for the rest of the time. Hua Jinyao knew that she was keeping Shi Mingwan company, but Lu Tongjia didn't know that. Seeing that Su Qing didn't even come back for the weekend, Lu Tongjia naturally thought that she was dissatisfied with her. That made her even more determined to carry out her plan. She had made a backup plan. This time, she didn't believe that Su Qing could survive it. On Saturday, Hua Jinyao was finally free. He took Su Qing and Shi Mingwan to play in Rome City for a day. In the evening, he took Su Qing and Shi Mingwan to have dinner with his childhood friends. He also introduced Shi Mingwan to Wan Xianying and the others. Except for Li Junsheng, who was still in Lin City, the others were all there. Li Junsheng didn't come, but Li Wanyu did. She didn't know what Hua Jinyao said to her last time, but she was much more friendly to Su Qing today. For Su Qing, this was a good thing. Because there were so many people, it was inevitable that it was a little noisy. Su Qing couldn't tell Hua Jinyao about what had happened at the club yesterday. However, there was something else that happened at the party that caught her attention. That was Wan Xianying seemed to be interested in Shi Mingwan. When Shi Mingwan entered the door with him, Wan Xianying stared at her for a long time. After they sat down, he looked in Shi Mingwan's direction from time to time with obvious interest in his eyes. During dinner, he sat next to Shi Mingwan on purpose. Later, when everyone went to the club under their name, Wan Xianying didn't forget to sit next to Shi Mingwan. He asked her to eat and play. He really made his presence known in front of her. Shi Mingwan knew that these people were Hua Jinyao's friends, so she didn't disrespect them. Even when Wan Xianying said that he wanted to sing a song with her, she stood up and sang with him. Su Qing had always known that Shi Mingwan had a good voice. When her voice came out, Tang Mohan and Cheng Xianyun couldn't help but look at her, not to mention Wan Xianying. Su Qing could see that Shi Mingwan had to socialize with Wan Xianying. However, Wan Xianying obviously took it to heart. She could naturally trust Hua Jinyao's friends. If Shi Mingwan could really have something with Wan Xianying, she thought it would be a good thing. However, looking at Shi Mingwan, she clearly didn't see Wan Xianying as a man who was interested in her. She only saw him as Hua Jinyao's childhood friend. It seemed that there was no possibility between the two of them. But overall, this day's gathering was a joyous one for both the host and the guests. The group of people didn't go home until very late. When they got home, Shi Mingwan was also tired. She didn't intend to be a third wheel to Su Qing and Hua Jinyao. As soon as she entered the door, she said goodbye and went back to her room to rest. After returning to her room and taking a shower, Su Qing-sang took out the hairdryer to dry her hair. Hua Jinyao took the initiative to come over and take the hairdryer from her hand to help her. It wasn't the first time he had done this, so he was very skilled. His big hand stroked Su Qing-sang's scalp. She felt very comfortable and even narrowed her eyes. Chapter 505. Su Qing-sang opened her eyes and looked at Hua Jinyao through the mirror on the dresser. Hua Jinyao didn't want to be nosy, but before they parted, Wan Xianying had come to him in private and asked him to ask Su Qing-sang what Shi Mengwan thought of him. He had heard about Wan Xianying's relationship before, but it had been more than a year since he broke up with his last girlfriend. It was rare for him to be interested in a woman, and she was Su Qing-sang's friend, so Hua Jinyao didn't mind talking to her. I don't think so. Su Qing-sang knew Shi Mengwan best. She has someone she likes. She won't be with Wan Xianying. Wan Xianying wasn't bad-looking. He wasn't as handsome as Hua Jinyao, nor was he as masculine as Zhang Yichen. However, he looked fair, gentle, and clean. He was the kind of fresh meat that people admire nowadays, but she knew that he wasn't Shi Mengwan's type. She has such high standards. Wan Xianying's family was not bad. Most importantly, Wan Xianying's aunt had wanted Wan Xianying to marry for a long time. If they were really interested in each other, Hua Jinyao thought it would be a good thing. After all, Shi Mengwan was a nice person, even though she always tried to steal his wife. It's not that she has high standards. Su Qing-sang thought about it and decided to tell Hua Jinyao. Mengwan likes someone like Zhang Haoze. Don't try to pull strings. Zhang Haoze? Of course Hua Jinyao knew Zhang Haoze. They had met before. Thinking about Zhang Haoze, Hua Jinyao frowned. Zhang Haoze is engaged, right? Yes. So they have no chance. But even if they had no chance, Shi Mengwan wouldn't change her mind to like someone else. Since they have no chance, let's try with Xianying. Xianying is a nice person, and he's not a playboy. Compared with other people in Rong City, he's clean and honest. By other people, Hua Jinyao was referring to his cousin, Lu Lixian, who wasn't very reliable. I'll ask, but my intuition tells me that she has no chance with Xianying. When her hair was almost dry, Su Qing-sang turned to look at Hua Jinyao. Jinyao, I forgot to tell you something. What? It was rare for Hua Jinyao to see her so serious. Don't tell me you also have someone you like outside? Su Qing-sang glared at him and ignored his joke. The hot spring club that you asked me to go to. Are you familiar with the boss inside? Not really. Hua Jinyao was telling the truth. He worked with Tianyu Group once before, but it would only happen once. Later, I heard that his background wasn't very clean, so we didn't work together anymore. As the president of Tianyu Group, Hua Jinyao was quite picky about his collaborators. It was said that the owner of the club was quite powerful, but that background was probably a little shady. Usually, the two families minded their own business. Later, he spent a lot of money to build his hot spring club. Naturally, he invited Hua Jinyao. For the sake of their previous cooperation, Hua Jinyao went there once. The other party was also very happy and gave him a gold card. There were too many such favors, so when he came back, he just casually left it there. If it weren't for the fact that Shi Mengwan had come to visit Su Qing-sang this time, Su Qing-sang wouldn't have let her go. He would never have thought that there was such a place to go. So you're not familiar with him? Yes, I'm not familiar with him. Hua Yuan, Hua Jinyao's great-uncle, was an official. He could be called a high-ranking official. Hua Jinyao's great-uncle was also a military commander. The Hua family was very cautious. They would never let themselves make mistakes. They would not let others gossip about them. Since they knew that the other party's background was a little awkward, they naturally wouldn't rush to make friends with him. But the Hua family wouldn't be afraid of them. What's wrong? Didn't you have fun there? It's not that I wasn't happy. Su Qing-sang blinked and told him about her encounter with Zhang Yichen. After all, it was a big deal in the club. If the owner of the club told Hua Jinyao about it in the future, she wanted him to know. She was also worried that if the owner of the club was really a shady person, Hua Jinyao wouldn't be able to guard against him. Is that so? Zhang Yichen wouldn't easily appear in that kind of place. Hua Jinyao's mind was working fast. He thought of some rumors he had heard before. Let's not go to that place next time. Of course we won't go there again. Since Hu Jiniao said so, Su Qingsang wasn't stupid. She wouldn't go there again. I just wanted to tell you, I didn't offend anyone openly. But at that time, I still use your power to suppress them. I'm afraid that they will cause you trouble later. Hu Jiniao put his arms around her waist. He enjoyed the care and worry in her eyes. Honey, why do you care about me so much? Su Qingsang blushed a little. He was her husband. If she didn't care about him, who would she care about? Honey, why do you care about me so much? Hu Jiniao suddenly became serious again. He put his face close to Su Qingsang's. Honey, I'm so touched. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore. She took a step back to avoid his face. His hands were still on her waist. She couldn't move away at all. She put her hands on his chest and said uncomfortably, Anyway, I mean, you should be careful. She didn't want to cause trouble for Hu Jiniao. But if trouble really came, she could only brace herself and face it. After all, in that situation, I had no choice but to use your identity to suppress them. Fortunately, it was fine. But then where did your uncle go? What did he do? I don't know. Anyway, when we got changed and came out, he was gone. Thinking of the mustache man's face the next morning, he should have passed. Right? Don't worry, honey. They won't be so stupid to provoke me. It would be fine if they didn't provoke him, but if they really did provoke him, even if that person had a powerful background, so what? He wasn't afraid. Next time something like this happens, just use my identity. Hu Jiniao looked at Su Qingsang with an indulgent expression on his face. Don't be polite to those people. Just tell them who you are. If there were still people who were stupid enough to make Su Qingsang unhappy, then he wouldn't be polite. Su Qingsang was a little touched when she heard that. The feeling of having someone behind her was really good. But after thinking about it, she reached out and gently poked Hu Jiniao's chest. Do you think I caused trouble outside every day? This time, it was purely an accident. If it weren't for my uncle suddenly rushing in, I would still be in the hot spring. Thinking of Zhang Yichen, Su Qingsang remembered how she was almost disheveled when he broke in. Chapter 506. She didn't want Hu Jiniao to continue the topic, so she thought of something else. Speaking of which, your uncle's family isn't bad. Why did he have to do these dangerous things? If he didn't do these dangerous things, how could he have been promoted to senior colonel in such a short time? Hu Jiniao admired Zhang Yichen very much. They had a good relationship, so he understood Zhang Yichen's choice. His uncle was already a commander. If Zhang Yichen had been relying on his father's influence, it wouldn't have been a problem. However, Zhang Yichen was obviously ambitious, so he had to work harder than others, so that people wouldn't think that he got to where he was because of his connections. Oh, right. What do you mean by uncle? Isn't my uncle your uncle? Su Qingsang stuck out her tongue. She couldn't tell him that Zhang Yichen looked too young. She wouldn't even think of the fact that he was one generation younger than her. Hu Jiniao suddenly narrowed his eyes, turned her body around, and moved closer to her face. You just said that my uncle saw you in the hot spring. Since she was in the hot spring, she wasn't wearing any clothes, was she? Hu Jiniao's face was so close that the tip of his nose almost touched hers. Su Qingsang blinked and looked into Hu Jiniao's deep eyes. That was an accident. Accident? Hu Jiniao put his hand on her shoulder and asked, Did he see you naked? His voice was not only obviously jealous, but Su Qingsang could also hear the danger in it. Looking at his enlarged face, she shook her head instinctively and said, No, I was wearing a swimsuit. Swimsuit? Which one? One-piece style? Or three-point style? Hu Jiniao said the last few words in a very low voice. His breath was warm, with a cool mint smell. Su Qingsang blushed slowly and said, Three-point style. Hu Jiniao narrowed his eyes and stared at Su Qingsang's face. He suddenly pulled her up and led her to the walk-in closet. Then he leaned against the door and looked at her. Su Qingsang didn't understand what he meant. She blinked and stood there without moving. Hurry up. His gaze was fervent, and there was a hint of impatience in his eyes. What? Find your swimsuit and put on. She didn't know, but Hu Jiniao didn't mind reminding her. Speaking of which, I've never seen you wear a bikini. Previously, when she went to Japan to soak in the hot springs, he said he wanted to go with her. Later, he had something to do and couldn't make it. This time, she brought Shi Mingwan to the hot spring club. He thought that it would be inconvenient for him to follow them since they were both women, so he didn't go. Speaking of which, he had never seen Su Qingsang in a swimsuit. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang didn't want to talk to this guy. She walked past him and was about to walk out when Hu Jinyao put his arm around her waist. With a twist, he easily fixed her body on the closet door of the cloakroom. Find it yourself and change it, or I'll help you. Choose one. I won't choose either. Su Qingsang shook her head. Even though she was blushing all the way to her neck, she didn't intend to compromise just like that. I'm sleepy. I'm going to bed. It's not like you're going swimming. So why are you wearing a swimsuit for him to see? He was going crazy, and she wasn't going to go crazy with him. Hu Jinyao nodded. It seems that you're more inclined to let me do it. As he spoke, he held her waist tightly, not giving her a chance to run out. He rummaged through her wardrobe. She had brought some luggage to Rong City, but not much. All the clothes in this closet were bought by him later. Naturally, there were swimsuits among them. After all, the Hua family had a swimming pool. Hu Jinyao casually rummaged through and found several sets. There were all kinds of colors and styles. I'll take this one. Taking out a pink swimsuit, Hu Jinyao glanced at Su Qingsang's body up and down. Come on, put it on. Hu Jinyao, that's enough. She wasn't going to the swimming pool now. So why would she wear a swimsuit? Well, since you don't want to, then I have to do it myself. Hu Jinyao wasn't joking with her. He was serious. How could Su Qingsang let him do it? She took a big step back. No, I'll do it myself. Hu Jinyao gestured for her to do it. With a smile on his face, he looked at Su Qingsang with eager eyes. Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable under his gaze, and her eyes fell on the cloth in his hand. She gritted her teeth and finally took it. She was wearing pajamas, so she had to take them off to change into the swimsuit. She had undressed in front of Hu Jinyao before, but most of the time he was the one doing it. Speaking of which, it was almost the first time that she took the initiative to do it in front of him. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang became more and more uncomfortable, and even felt a little weak in her legs. Hu Jinyao's eyes were still staring at her, and there seemed to be a faint spark in his eyes. When she took off her pajamas, the spark in his eyes turned into flames. Su Qingsang felt a little thirsty. She let the pajamas slide to the ground, and finally put on the small piece of cloth with trembling hands. Her movements weren't fast, but being stared at by him, even if he was her husband and they had been intimate so many times, still made her feel embarrassed. Hu Jinyao watched Su Qingsang put on the bikini, and the flames in his eyes turned into flames. Su Qingsang tied the strap behind her, only to find that Hu Jinyao had been staring at her. She suddenly had a feeling that she didn't know where to put her hands and feet. She couldn't help but take a step back, and her body hit the door of the wardrobe behind her. Hu Jinyao took a step forward and stood still. He stared at her face, and his eyes were burning. I've already put on for you to see. Su Qingsang's voice was a little hoarse. She blinked and wanted to move aside. Excuse me, I'm going to sleep. Hu Jinyao was like a big bad wolf staring at a little white rabbit, and his eyes were almost glowing red. How could he let her go like this? Honey, he put one hand on the side of her neck, and his tall body made it impossible for her to hide. Did you want Zhang Yiqin to see you like this today? Why did he beat Zhang Yiqin up? Shouldn't he hide somewhere? Hide in the hot spring, where Su Qingsang was? He really deserved a beating. I told you, it was an accident. It was an accident, but when he thought of Zhang Yiqin looking at Su Qingsang's seductive face, he felt a little uncomfortable. Of course, he trusted Zhang Yiqin's character. He came from the army, and he was a man of integrity. He had heard from his great-aunt that a new female soldier who had just joined the army had a crush on Zhang Yiqin. The sky was swaying in front of Zhang Yiqin. However, Zhang Yiqin didn't move. Later, that female soldier somehow got the courage to walk up to Zhang Yiqin and take off her clothes, trying to make it a reality. However, Zhang Yiqin ignored the female soldier's attempt to throw herself into his arms and directly threw her out of the room. Of course, when he threw her out, he still cared about her face and threw her clothes out. Although the female soldier hurriedly put on her clothes, she still couldn't suppress the matter. Later, that female soldier was transferred away. Maybe she was directly discharged from the army. Zhang Yiqin had been in this kind of situation many times. In addition, in the past few years, he seemed to be focused on building his career, and he didn't care much about women. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in his 30s without a girlfriend and didn't want to get married. As Hu Jinyao was thinking about this, his eyes fell on Su Qingsang's chest. He suddenly felt his throat tighten. How could those mediocre women be compared to Su Qingsang? Su Qingsang was Su Qingsang, and those people were those people. Lowering his head, he bit down on her lips, neither too lightly nor too heavily. Su Qingsang felt the pain and let out a moan. To Hu Jinyao, this moan was like pouring oil on the fire in his eyes. Right on the wardrobe door, he pressed her body down and kissed her hard. Su Qingsang's back was against the wardrobe door, and she only felt cold. She was afraid of the cold, so she held Hu Jinyao with both hands and tried to move forward a little. Hu Jinyao narrowed his eyes and picked her up. She looked like she was throwing herself into his arms. The moment her body was in the air, Su Qingsang was so scared that she held Hu Jinyao's neck tightly. Hu Jinyao stared at her snow-white breasts in front of him, and his eyes darkened. Against her neck, he said in a nasal voice, "Wife, you are mine." Her body, and everything about her belonged to him. He didn't want any other man to touch her. Even if that man was his uncle, it was the same. Hu Jinyao looked at Yang Wenchang in front of him and narrowed his eyes. "What did you say?" He Xianyao, the daughter of the He family, came to the company yesterday. Who agreed? It wasn't me. Yang Wenchang was afraid that Hu Jinyao would think of him. The chairman arranged it. My father. Yes. Yang Wenchang looked at Hu Jinyao's face and said carefully, she was arranged to replace Zhang Yang, but I didn't agree. Later, she said she would go to the marketing department. We let her go. She said she would go to the marketing department, and you let her go? Hu Jinyao raised his eyebrows, his eyes sharp. Yang Wenchang lowered his head again, and his eyes were full of guilt. Well, the chairman. Hu Jinyao didn't say anything. This was not Hu Mingguang's idea, but Lu Tongjia's. It's okay. She wants to stay in the marketing department, right? It's okay. Starting tomorrow, let her work with old Zhang in the marketing department. Whatever old Zhang does, we'll do it together with her. Yang Wenchang's eyes lit up. His boss had made a smart move. President Hua, why didn't I think of this before? Do you think that the one who came is an ancestor and we have to worship her? Hu Jinyao and Yang Wenchang had worked together for many years and had a tacit understanding. However, Yang Wenchang had to listen to Hu Mingguang sometimes. After all, Hu Mingguang was the chairman. Hu Jinyao understood Yang Wenchang's position, but he wouldn't let it go. Chapter 507. Hu Jinyao's voice sounded deliberate. He had already decided to forget about He Xianyao setting him up. Since she was so blind and wanted to come looking for trouble, Lin Fan thought to himself. She shouldn't blame him for making her unhappy. Yes. Yang Wenchang nodded. He looked like he was watching a good show. Originally, he wanted to leave, but he suddenly thought of something else. President Hua, there's something I think I should tell you. About the Ike's case. Yes. The case has been going well, but there seems to be a problem with the signing. The signing has been delayed for a few days. Normally, the contract should have been signed by now. With Hui Yifan's ability, it shouldn't have been delayed for so long. Yang Wenchang began to feel that something was wrong. What's the problem? Hu Jinyao looked at Yang Wenchang. Before he could ask him to clarify the problem, Yang Wenchang's phone rang. He glanced at Hu Jinyao. It's Micah, the representative from Ike's. Meeting Hu Jinyao's eyes, he quickly picked up the phone. He looked at Hu Jinyao and spoke to the other party in English while putting the phone on speaker. Hu Jinyao could hear the voice on the other end of the phone clearly. Micah wanted to meet him? Yang Wenchang signaled with his eyes whether he could agree or not. Hu Jinyao shook his head. Yang Wenchang understood immediately. He told the other party that Hu Jinyao wouldn't be free for the next 2 days. As for when they could meet, it would depend on when Hu Jinyao was free. After hanging up, Yang Wenchang looked confused. President Hua, what do you think is going on with Hu Yifan? He had worked for Hu Jinyao for many years. Naturally, he knew that Hu Yifan didn't get along with Hu Jinyao. As for why he didn't want to replace him, It was because he didn't want Hu Jinyao to be the president. Don't worry about him. If Micah wants to meet me again, say yes. Okay. Yang Wenchang understood. What about Hui Yifan? Ignore him. As long as Micah made a move, Hui Yifan wouldn't be able to sit still. Yang Wenchang would know what Micah wanted. Yes. Yang Wenchang picked up the documents and was about to leave when he remembered one last thing. By the way, President Hua, the temporary replacement for Zhang Yang, has passed the interview. Her name is Ding Qing, and she's a top student at T University. She started working today. You deal with these matters. There's no need to tell me. Yang Wenchang responded and left. Hu Jinyao was lost in thought. Based on Hui Yifan's cunning, even if he couldn't get Ike's deal in the shortest time possible, he wouldn't have dragged it on for so long. More importantly, there was no way Ix would come back to him. After all, if he couldn't complete this project well, his position in the Tianyu group would be awkward in the end. Even Hua Mingguang couldn't say anything. Was Hui Yifan really that stupid? Or did he have other tricks up his sleeve? No matter which one it was, he wasn't afraid. He would just deal with it as it came. There was another knock on the door. Hu Jinyao looked unhappy. The person who came was Su Qingseng. This was her first time visiting the Tianyu group in Rome City. If she hadn't met Yang Wenchang just now, she wouldn't have been able to come up. After all, she was the wife of the president of the Tianyu group. Many people had only heard of her, but never met her. Why are you here? Seeing Su Qingseng, Hu Jinyao stood up to greet her. Mengwan and I happened to be shopping nearby, so I thought I'd come to see you. What? So you came to see me on the way? Hu Jinyao raised his hand to cover his chest, looking hurt. Honey, I'm hurt. Seeing him like this, Su Qingseng wanted to laugh. She raised the small box in her hand and said, Since you're hurt, I guess you can't have dessert, right? Can I give it to someone else? No. His wife bought it for him. Even if he didn't like sweets, he couldn't let it fall into someone else's hands. Hu Jinyao took the box from her hand and put it on the coffee table. He put it on the coffee table and said, Hey, didn't you say you came with Shermeng Wan? Where's she? She went to the bathroom. She had never been to Hu Jinyao's workplace, so she brought Shermeng Wan here. Good timing. Let's have dinner together tonight. Hu Jinyao received a call from one Xianying today. Xianying said he wants to treat you to dinner. Treating me is fake. It's Meng Wan, right? Su Qingseng blinked. Did he think she didn't know what one Xianying was thinking? Then will you do me the honor? I will, but it's really impossible for him and Meng Wan to be together. Su Qingseng had already asked Shermeng Wan today, and she didn't mean that. Besides, she's leaving tomorrow. Leaving tomorrow? Why don't you stay for a few more days? I have to work, and I can't be with her every day. She also has things to do in Lin City. So she and Xianying are destined not to be together. As Su Qingseng spoke, her phone rang. Shermeng Wan was already ready and waiting for her downstairs. I'll leave first. Let's talk about dinner later. Since it was impossible for them to be together, it was better not to give him hope. When Su Qingseng left, she pointed at the snacks on the coffee table and blew a kiss at Hu Jinyao. Seeing his eyes suddenly become deep, she immediately became timid and quickly walked out. Su Qingseng walked out of the office. Before she reached the elevator, she saw a beautiful woman walking toward her. She was a real beauty. She was about 170 centimeters tall, had a slim figure, a voluptuous body, beautiful facial features, and exquisite makeup. She was wearing a pair of Gucci high heels and a Chanel business suit. She didn't have a special concept of brands. However, she happened to see the woman in front of her in a magazine when she went to the spa a few days ago. Su Qingseng blinked. There was such a beauty in Hu Jinyao's office. How good were the benefits of Tianyu Group? The woman was holding a stack of documents in her hand. She looked like a standard elite office woman. She was looking at the woman, and the woman was looking at her. Su Qingseng wanted to go out with Shermeng Wan. She came out in sportswear. She looked casual and casual. Although Su Qingseng didn't feel that she was inferior to the woman in front of her, she felt that she lacked a sense of formality and solemnity. Su Qingseng also felt strange when she realized her own mentality. What was even stranger was that Su Qingseng didn't know if it was an illusion, but she seemed to see a flash of contempt in the woman's eyes. She wanted to see it clearly, but the woman curled the corners of her lips and smiled at her. She didn't speak, but took the stack of documents, walked past her, and walked toward Hua Jinyao's office. Chapter 508. Su Qing suddenly turned to look at her. She still had a faint smile on her lips. Before Su Qing could say anything, she waved the folder in her hand and went straight into Hua Jinyao's office. Before entering the door, the moment she pushed it open, she turned to look at Su Qing. When their eyes met, she silently said 4 words. "Open the door and close it." Just like that, the graceful figure disappeared behind the door. Su Qing's expression became a little strange. It was her first time in Hua Jinyao's office. When Yang Wenchang took her upstairs just now, they took the elevator for the president. She didn't meet anyone. So how did this woman know her identity? Qing Sang? What's wrong? Shi Mengwan's words brought her back to reality. Only then did she realize that she had already left the building of Tianya Group and had already reached the parking lot. Nothing. Su Qing shook her head. Thinking of the last few words that her daughter had uttered, she suddenly felt a sense of provocation. Who was that woman? What did she mean by those words? TSK, I know you and Hua Jinyao are very loving. You don't have to look like this when you leave him, do you? After all, you two are together every day now. Shi Mengwan was quite dissatisfied with her absent-mindedness. I haven't even gone up and let you two be alone. Why are you still so reluctant to leave? I'm so jealous. What are you talking about? Su Qing was amused by her words. It's not that I can't bear to leave him. I just remembered that Hua Jinyao doesn't seem to like desserts. In the end, I sent 2 boxes of desserts up. She had been shopping with Shi Mengwan and happened to walk near the dessert shop, so she bought desserts. Later, she remembered that she had gone out to eat with Hua Jinyao a few times, and she had never seen him eat desserts at the Hua family. You're a little incompetent as a wife. Shi Mengwan's words were teasing. You don't even know what your husband likes to eat? Who said that? I know. I just forgot. Su Qing blushed a little. She had really forgotten about it, because she was shopping. I think you should be more careful in the future. Otherwise, your husband is so handsome and has such a high status. If a girl comes and snatches him away one day, you won't even have a place to cry. Screw you. My Jinyao wouldn't do that. Su Qing was sure, but she couldn't help but think of the woman she had just seen upstairs. Somehow, she felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. My Jinyao, TSK, your words are so sour. Shi Mengwan's voice brought her back to her senses. She shook off that thought. She believed in Hua Jinyao's character. He would never betray his love and marriage. Inexplicably, this was what she believed. With such confidence, she didn't ask Hua Jinyao who the woman was that night. There was no need to ask, and there was no need to know. Since she chose to trust him, there was no need for her to ask anything else. Because Shi Mengwan was about to leave, she slept with Shi Mengwan that night. As for Hua Jinyao's dark expression, she instinctively ignored it. The next day, Su Qing sent Shi Mengwan off, returned to the hospital, and continued to do what she was supposed to do. The courtyard became busy. For a few days, it was as if a wave of people were rushing to give birth. Every day, they had to receive a large number of pregnant women. The ward was almost full. Not only were they busy, but there were also a few pregnant women who weren't in good condition, so they had to pay attention to them from time to time. Not to mention her, even Zheng Qinyu was very busy. Some pregnant women were picky and said that they didn't want male doctors, but when there were no doctors, male doctors were also useful. Under such circumstances, when the next weekend came, Su Qing naturally didn't go back to the Hua family. She could only call old Master Hua and tell him that she had to be on duty this weekend, so she might not be able to see him. Old Master Hua was very understanding about his granddaughter-in-law's work. He didn't say much, but just told her to work hard. Hua Jinyao looked at Micah, who was sitting in front of him. Next to him was his secretary, Vera. This time, Hua Jinyao brought Yang Wenchang with him. They had been sitting for 20 minutes. Micah didn't open the door, but Hua Jinyao was calm. He was leisurely drinking the tea in front of him. The tea is good. Hua Jinyao glanced at Yang Wenchang, who was sitting next to him, with appreciation. Try it. His attitude was a little frivolous. Micah was angry, but he didn't show it on his face. President Hua, you still have the leisure to drink tea? I thought you wouldn't even be able to eat now. Why would I? Hua Jinyao smiled. Why would I not be able to eat? President Hua. Micah thought that Hua Jinyao was pretending. In his opinion, how could Hua Jinyao not care about it all? That was impossible. You were the one who talked to me about the cooperation between our two companies. Why is it Mr. Hui Yifan now? No matter who I talk to, the final result is the cooperation with Tianyu Group. I don't see the difference. Of course there's a difference. Micah looked at Hua Jinyao, as if feeling sorry for him. President Hua, we had a good talk before. I thought you were willing to cooperate with me. Yes, Tianyu Group is willing to cooperate with Ike's at any time. Hua Jinyao was talking about the two companies, but Micah was talking about the two of them. Micah wasn't stupid. Of course, he understood. President Hua, I don't think you are willing to give such a big piece of the cake to your brother. You said it yourself, he is my brother. If that's the case, why do we have to be separate? But Tianyu Group should be yours. Micah looked sad. Isn't it? Mr. Micah, please be careful. Tianyu Group belongs to the Hua family. But without your father, the Hua family wouldn't be where it is now. Hua Jinyao didn't deny this. Why could Hua Mingguang become the chairman, while Hua Mingliang could only be a director, which was an idle job? When Tianyu Group was first established, it couldn't be on such a scale. Although Old Master Hua was ruthless, he only made Tianyu Group the largest in Rong City. After Hua Mingguang took over, he expanded the business to other cities in the country. He also laid the foundation for Tianyu Group to become a multinational company. After that, Hua Jinyao took over. After he took over, he made a series of measures to make Tianyu Group stronger. Hua Jinyao understood what Micah meant. Seriously speaking, he and Hua Mingguang should be the only ones in Tianyu Group. Of course, it was the same now. However, after Hua Yifan graduated from school and entered Tianyu Group, he started to have more thoughts with Hua Yiyang and Hua Yifan. They did a lot of small things, but Hua Mingguang tolerated them all. Because of this, Hua Jinyao had a lot of troubles. Mr. Micah, what are you trying to say? Just say it. If you want to sow discord between me and my brother, you don't have to. In some ways, I trust him. Even if he didn't trust him, it was the Hua family's business. He wouldn't show it in front of Micah, a collaborator, or a foreigner. Mr. Hua, I can't be compared to you. Micah sighed. He seemed to be helpless about Hua Jinyao's words. Mr. Hua, I sincerely want to cooperate with you, but I know some small things. I think Mr. Hua will be very interested in them. Micah didn't beat around the bush. He got to the point. Hua Jinyao looked at him. Because of what Micah said next, his expression finally changed. It was rare that Su Qingsang didn't have to be on duty or stay in a hospital. She bought some bird food to feed the parrot, then bought 2 boxes of tea to visit Old Master Hua. She had heard from Hua Jinyao that Old Master Hua loved tea. The Hua family must have good tea. They had a lot of special tea, but the tea she gave him would be different. It was an apology for not having time to visit Old Master Hua. Old Master Hua was really nice to her and trusted her. Su Qingsang was very grateful. If she could, she would like to spend more time with Old Master Hua. However, when Su Qingsang arrived at the Hua family's house, she found that Old Master Hua had gone out to see an old friend. He would come back later. As for how late, Uncle Ching didn't know if he would come back for dinner. Su Qingsang finally decided to visit the parrot before going home. Old Master Hua wasn't there, so Su Qingsang couldn't stay. The main thing was that if she ran into Lu Tongjiao later, they wouldn't quarrel, but they never had a good conversation when they met. Therefore, she didn't want to be impulsive. Su Qingsang stood under the eaves in the backyard. Rong City was getting warmer. The temperature wasn't high, but at least it wasn't as cold as before. The parrot seemed to be very happy to see her and kept squawking. But even if it was happy, the parrot had to express its dissatisfaction. Bastard, don't look at me. Bastard, ignore me. Su Qingsang was so angry that she wanted to laugh. It was the bird who had been cold and ignored her no matter how she called. Why was she ignoring it now? What was even funnier was that it was complaining, but it still scolded her. I think you shouldn't be called Jadeite. Change it to rascal. You like scolding people so much. Rascal, you rascal. Rascal, you rascal. The parrot scolded her again. Su Qing Sang really laughed. Why was the bird getting addicted to scolding her? Su Qing Sang rarely got playful. She glared at the bird in front of her fiercely. You're having fun, aren't you? Believe it or not, I'll pluck all your feathers, kill you, and eat you. Bad guy, bad guy. The parrot squawked even louder. Boss, help. Bad guy. He wants to eat me. Boss, help. Help, ha ha ha. Su Qing Sang couldn't help but laugh out loud. She was overjoyed. The bird was so funny. She didn't laugh for long before she heard low laughter behind her. Chapter 509. Uncle. Su Qing Sang blinked and looked at the person in front of her. She found that she had been seeing Zhang Yiqin more often recently, but it didn't seem to be a coincidence. After all, the Hua family was Zhang Yiqin's uncle's home. He could come and go as he pleased without any scruples. Zhang Yiqin looked at Su Qing Sang and responded to the word uncle in a very casual tone. He seemed to be smiling just now. The corners of his mouth were still curled up with a faint, shallow smile. Su Qing Sang wasn't sure how much of her conversation with the parrot he had heard. Somehow, she felt a little embarrassed. It seemed that whenever she appeared in front of him, she wouldn't look good. Uncle, are you here for Grandpa? Grandpa went out. He's not home. I know. Zhang Yiqin was here for old Master Hua. He didn't know until later that Su Qing Sang and Hua Jinyao only came to the Hua family's house on weekends. He wanted to avoid Su Qing Sang when she came. Unexpectedly, he didn't manage to avoid her. He didn't expect Su Qing Sang to be at home. Not only was she at home, but she was also playing with the parrot in the backyard. When she smiled, there was a hint of innocence and frankness in it. She didn't have the arrogance that other girls in Rome City had. She looked as cute as a girl next door. But he knew there was only one side of her. She had many other sides. She was cunning when she was trying to blackmail the family members, and she was serious when she was stitching up people's wounds. And she was arrogant and aggressive when she was facing that man's subordinates. The last thing that flashed through his mind was Su Qing Sang's smooth shoulders that were half exposed when she was soaking in a hot spring, and her jade-like skin. Realizing what he was thinking, he put on a serious expression, and the smile on his face faded a little. He looked so serious that Su Qing Sang thought he didn't want to see her. Well, she was the one who saw him hiding in the closet in a sorry state. Then, Uncle, please help yourself. I'm leaving. She was about to walk into the house when Zhang Yiqin suddenly stopped her when she was about to walk past him. Don't move. Su Qing Sang was startled and subconsciously glanced at him. Zhang Yiqin realized that his tone was too stiff. He lowered his voice uncomfortably and said, There's something dirty. Where? Don't move. Zhang Yiqin raised his hand and gently plucked a feather out her hair. She looked at him with hidden eagerness in her eyes. However, the corners of his lips were tightly pursed. That was the result of him trying his best to restrain himself. Su Qing Sang didn't see the look on Zhang Yiqin's face. When he brought the feather to her, she lowered her head and said, Thank you. The corners of Zhang Yiqin's mouth were cold and stiff. Even his voice was lower. No need. Su Qing Sang didn't stay long because of his cold attitude. She left as fast as she could. Zhang Yiqin stood there without moving. After Su Qing Sang left, the expression on his face relaxed a little. He closed his eyes and sniffed. There was still the faint fragrance of Su Qing Sang in the air. Zhang Yiqin abruptly opened his eyes and looked at a spot in the garden. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he keenly sensed that someone was spying on him just now. The feeling of being watched was very obvious. If he hadn't been distracted just now, he would have realized it. Zhang Yiqin's expression was serious. He stared in that direction for a long time, but the feeling disappeared. His face darkened slightly. He suddenly realized that he had been too careless. He should have been more careful not to let anyone see anything. After all, he could restrain that little bit of lustful thoughts. But was it really just a little bit? They had only met a few times, and they had only interacted for a short time. But he couldn't help but think about it. If only she wasn't Hua Jinyao's wife. If only she hadn't gotten married so early. He even thought that if the person she married was him, would she also show such a gentle smile in front of him with a tinge of shyness? Closing his eyes, Zhang Yiqin suppressed this crazy thought in time. He clenched his fists so tightly that the veins on the back of his hands were bulging. He couldn't think about it anymore. If someone found out about it, it wouldn't end well for him and Su Qingsang. Zhang Yiqin glanced at the place again, thinking about the possibility of who was there. Finally, he turned and left. When Su Qingsang got home, she found that Hu Jinyao had come home earlier than her. She was a little surprised. Ms. Yu was cooking in the kitchen, while Hu Jinyao was sitting on a chair on the balcony. It was so cold outside, but he didn't come in. He didn't notice that she was back. Su Qingsang frowned, put down the things, changed her shoes, and walked out. Jinyao. Hu Jinyao turned around and smiled when he saw Su Qingsang. "You're back." Su Qingsang blinked and looked at him. The lights on the balcony were off. She seemed to have seen a flash of gloominess in Hu Jinyao's eyes. But now, he was only looking at her with a faint smile, as if that emotion just now was her illusion. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Why did you come out here to stand in the cold wind alone?" The heating in Rome City hadn't been turned off yet, so it was very cold outside. She felt cold even standing there, not to mention how long he had been standing in the cold wind. Su Qingsang suddenly reached out and held his hand. She found that his hand was not as warm as it used to be. Instead, it was ice cold. Su Qingsang glared at him. "Hu Jinyao, you call this okay?" The concern in her eyes was real. Hu Jinyao looked at her and suddenly reached out to pull her into his arms. Su Qingsang was stunned for a second, then hugged him with both hands around his waist. His clothes were cold from the wind. She leaned her face against it, feeling a little uncomfortable from the coldness. "Hu Jinyao." She didn't look up, but slightly tightened her arms. "I'm your wife. You can tell me if you need anything." "Yes. Maybe I can't help you with your business. I can't even help you with other things. But at least I can listen." Su Qingsang's voice was very soft, but it sounded in the dark night. Hu Jinyao was still silent. He couldn't say it. He looked at Su Qingsang and thought about what Micah said in the afternoon. He couldn't say it. He couldn't tell Su Qingsang that his mother, his father, his cousin, and his uncle, almost everyone didn't want him to live well. Hu Jinyao closed his eyes and rested his chin on the top of Su Qingsang's head. There was a light fragrance in her hair, and he felt that the smell was very comfortable. Her body was very soft. Compared to his figure, it was delicate and soft. Hugging her in his arms, it made his heart soften. Chapter 510. Su Qingsang looked up at him with her clear eyes. If there was moonlight, he could see his shadow in her eyes. But even without moonlight, Hu Jinyao knew that her eyes were full of him. His heart moved slightly, but he didn't respond to her words. "Hu Jinyao, if you don't want to tell me, I won't ask. But I hope you understand. We are husband and wife. Since we are husband and wife, we are one. You could try talking to me too." He tried to trust her and tell her about his troubles. She might not be able to help, but at least there was someone to share his worries with and listen to him. Hu Jinyao's response was to reach out and hug her tightly. Ms. Yu's voice came from inside. Dinner was ready. Su Qingsang patted Hu Jinyao's back and said, "Let's go. Let's go eat." Hu Jinyao let go of her and looked at Su Qingsang's beautiful face. He lowered his head and planted a light kiss on her forehead. "Don't worry. I'm fine." Su Qingsang didn't believe him, but since he said so, she could only believe him. She felt a little disappointed in her heart that she didn't even know about. She was almost a blank piece of paper in front of him. Whether it was her family background or her thoughts, everything was under his control. He knew everything clearly, but she felt that he still had secrets, things that he didn't want to share with her. That didn't feel good. She thought that maybe he really didn't want to tell her because of work, or maybe because she wouldn't understand even if he told her. That little bit of discomfort was suppressed in a corner of her heart and became a small seed. Hu Jinyao looked at the documents handed to him by the person in front of him and glanced at her. Ding Qing, the new female secretary, was here to replace Zhang Yang. She graduated from MIT, had a good education background, and had a very good resume. Such a talent came to Tianyu Group as a secretary. It didn't mean that Tianyu Group's secretaries were bad. It was because with Ding Qing's resume, she could get a better position. However, Hu Jinyao later watched the video of her interview and the reason why she came to apply for the job. According to her, her mother had been in poor health recently, so she wanted to come back and spend more time with her. Another reason was that Hu Jinyao had worked with the company she used to work for. She liked the way Hu Jinyao's company did things, and she hoped to learn new things from Tianya Group. She had been in the company for more than a week, and her performance was indeed quite outstanding. Not only was she able to do the things that Yang Wenchang arranged for her, but there were also some things that she could do well even without his arrangement. Usually, Hu Jinyao didn't use female secretaries. However, Ding Qing was indeed very capable. Therefore, 1 week was enough for him to change his mind about replacing her. Ding Qing stood there, looking a little nervous. He looked at Hu Jinyao with uncertainty in his eyes. President Hua, are the documents all right? No. Hu Jinyao withdrew his gaze, signed the document, and handed it to her. Zhang Yang will go on vacation in 2 days. Tell him to hand over the rest of the work to you. Yes, I know. Zhang Yang has told me what to do. Ding Qing smiled and held the document in her hands in front of her chest. It seemed that the document was a little lower than her chest. Because of that, the 2 lumps in her chest seemed to be completely squeezed together. Hu Jinyao didn't see that, but Ding Qing looked at Hu Jinyao's eyes with concern. President Hua, you don't look so good. Did you not sleep well yesterday? Do you want me to make you a cup of coffee? Sure. Hu Jinyao did not sleep well yesterday. He didn't know if it was because of what Micah said, but he had been having nightmares these days. He rubbed between his eyebrows and signaled Ding Qing to leave. A few minutes after Ding Qing left, she came back with a cup of coffee in her hand. There was a small piece of cake on top of it. President Hua, I don't think it's good to drink coffee on an empty stomach. Have a piece of cake. Hu Jinyao glanced at Ding Qing. Her eyes were very calm. President Hua, take care of yourself. I'm still waiting to learn from you. Hu Jinyao looked at her calmness and didn't think much of it. Thank you, but I don't like cake. Oh, really? Ding Qing seemed to be very upset. I saw a box of desserts in your office last time. My wife bought it. What he meant was obvious. Since Su Qing-sang bought it, even if she didn't like it, she had to eat it. And Ding Qing wasn't qualified. Ding Qing wasn't mad at all, even though it was a very direct sentence. Instead, she stuck out her tongue. I'm sorry, President Hua. I didn't know. It's okay. You could take it out. Hu Jinyao lowered his head and focused on the document in front of him. Ding Qing picked up the piece of cake. The look on her face seemed to be still upset and blaming herself for her mistake. However, when she turned around, the regret in her eyes suddenly disappeared. Was he eating it because his wife bought it? She would like to see if Hu Jinyao would eat it when she brought it to his office again. Hu Jinyao came out of the shower with a towel on his head. He casually dried his hair with the towel, then sat in front of the dressing table, waiting for Su Qing-sang to dry his hair for him. However, he was about to be disappointed. Su Qing-sang was video chatting with Li Qianxue. After all this time, Li Qianxue's company had stabilized. She also found a professional manager to help her. Now that the company was stable, she looked much better. At the moment, she was talking to Su Qing-sang about Old Master Li's birthday. Old Master Li's birthday was on the 3rd of next month. It was not many days away, although it wasn't a birthday celebration. Old Master Li had just reunited with his granddaughter, and he hoped that Su Qing-sang could come home to celebrate his birthday. However, even if Old Master Li wanted to, he didn't want to add to Su Qing-sang's troubles. So, he could only talk about it in front of Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue found it funny, but also sad. Her daughter had never been taken care of for even a day. When she reunited with her granddaughter, she was married to a place so far away. I know you're busy with work, but your grandpa really wants you to come home. Qing-sang, can you arrange it? Li Qianxue was a little careful with her words. She was really afraid that Su Qing-sang wouldn't be willing. Speaking of which, during this period of time, the relationship between mother and daughter had improved a lot, but she still often worried that her daughter would choose to resent her because of the previous 20 years of neglect. Even though she knew that Su Qing-sang wasn't that kind of person, some thoughts couldn't be suppressed. Mom, what are you talking about? Of course I have to come back for Grandpa's birthday. In the past, when she wasn't the granddaughter of the Li family, she would appear on Old Master Li's birthday, Not to mention now that she was old Master Li's biological granddaughter. Really? Okay, then I'll talk to your grandpa. The smile on Li Qianxue's face became a little more sincere. Su Qingsang also felt very happy. She actually missed Li Qianxue very much, although they could video chat every day and talk on the phone. But seeing her in person was still different from seeing her on video. Okay, you tell Grandpa that I will definitely come back. Then let Jinyao come back together. It was not right for a grandson-in-law to not be there. Okay, I'll tell him. Su Qingsang finished speaking, but there was one thing she didn't say. That was, what about Su Changwei? Should he go back? However, looking at Li Qianxue's happy face, she didn't mention Su Changhui in the end to make Li Qianxue unhappy. After ending the call, she saw Hu Jinyao sitting in the back. His hair was slightly wet, and his expression was a little sad. Hey, you took a shower? Then I'll go take a shower. Su Qingsang put down her phone and was about to get up, but Hu Jinyao grabbed her hand. Honey, help me dry my hair. Su Qingsang glanced at him, took the hairdryer from the side, and began to dry his hair for him. She also told him that she was going back to Lin City next month. Although it was next month, it was actually almost next week. It's Grandpa's birthday, so of course we have to go back. After Hu Jinyao finished speaking, as if he suddenly thought of something, he said, there are a lot of things to do in the company recently. I'll make some arrangements and go back with you when the time comes. Thank you. You're so nice. Su Qingsang was very happy. She was so happy that she bent down to kiss Hu Jinyao's face. For a moment, she forgot that she still had the hairdryer in her hand. Ugh! Hu Jinyao groaned in pain. Only then did she realize that she had hurt him. Are you okay? Let me see. Were you hurt? Hu Jinyao put her on his lap and turned off the hairdryer. Seeing the worried look on her face, he leaned over and kissed her on the lips. You're sad. You were so happy when you talked about going back to Lin City. I'm hurt. I need you to comfort me. Su Qingsang looked at his playful face and said, How do you want me to comfort you? What do you think? Hu Jinyao put his arm around her waist, looked at her tender red lips, and kissed them hard. Every day after Hu Jinyao went into the company, Ding Qing was responsible for telling him about his schedule for the day. Today, Hu Jinyao didn't ask her to leave as he usually did. Book 2 tickets for me on the second flight to Lin City. In the past, Zhang Yang had been the one to do all these things. After saying that, he noticed that Ding Qing was standing still and looking up at him. What's wrong? Is there a problem? No problem. Ding Qing nodded. President Hua, are you going to Lin City with Assistant Yang on a business trip? No, I'm going to Lin City with my wife. Ding Qing's hand that was holding the pen slightly tightened, but she smiled and nodded. Okay, I'll go now. Hu Jinyao thought that Su Qingsang would want to see Li Qianxue as soon as possible, so he asked Ding Qing to book the tickets for the morning. He waved his hand and let her go. After Ding Qing went back to her office, she didn't hurry to book the tickets. Instead, she took out her phone and dialed a few numbers. President Hua is going to Lin City on the 2nd of next month. She told Ding Qing what she had heard. She didn't know what the other side of the phone said, but a bright smile appeared on her face. Chapter 511. After saying that, she kept listening to the man's voice. The smile on her face never faded. Okay, I got it. I'll be careful. Don't worry. He doesn't suspect me for now. If you don't believe me, you can do it yourself. When Ding Qing smiled, there was a hint of playfulness in her eyes. More than that, she was confident. After hanging up, Ding Qing held the phone in her hand and spun it in a circle. She fixed her eyes on the desktop on the screen, which she had specially set up. It was Hu Jinyao's photo. Su Qingsang gave the leave request to Sun Huiya to sign. She was actually quite embarrassed. She had asked for leave several times in the past 2 months. She had been accompanying Shi Mengwan before, but this time she was going back to Lin City. Although it hadn't been long, she still felt embarrassed. It's okay. I know you're from Lin City. Sun Huiya understood her well. How about I give you one more day? You can come back to work on Tuesday. You can have a good rest then. Su Qingsang had been doing well since she came to the hospital. She had been very cooperative and good. Sun Huiya didn't mind taking care of her. That's great. Thank you, Director Sunday. After asking for leave, Su Qing-sang started thinking about what she should buy for Old Master Li and Li Qianxue in Lin City after work. After all, her flight was tomorrow. She should ask Hua Jinyao. She had given Old Master Hua a parrot before, so she couldn't give him another parrot. She couldn't take it to Lin City either. She was still thinking about it. The emergency room downstairs sent a pregnant woman who had been in a car accident. Her condition was complicated. The emergency room said that Su Qing-sang had seen this pregnant woman before, and the hospital had a record of it. Hearing that, Su Qing-sang hurried forward. Su Qing-sang looked at the woman. She looked familiar. Su Qing-sang didn't remember who she was until the nurse brushed the woman's hair away from her face. Wasn't this the woman Li Hong who had tried to blackmail Zhang Yichen a month ago? This time, the woman wasn't pretending. She was really hit by a car. Su Qing-sang looked at the big pool of blood on her body and said, "Hurry, get ready for surgery." The driver who drove her here was obviously frightened. He kept explaining, "I didn't hit her. She rushed out on her own. I didn't have time to avoid her." Don't say anything. Now is not the time to blame anyone. We need to save people. Su Qing-sang didn't have time to argue with this man. Li Hong was 6 months pregnant the last time she was here. Now, she was 7 months pregnant. This was a good time, but also not a good one. If they were lucky, the child could be saved. If they were unlucky, the child might not be born safely, and the pregnant woman might not even be able to keep her life. Su Qing-sang didn't have the energy to deal with the car owner. She ordered the doctors to prepare the operating room and push Li Hong into the delivery room. At the same time, he instructed Li Mailin to make sure that the pregnant woman's family members signed the paperwork when they arrived. After explaining everything, Su Qing-sang followed him into the operating room. When he really went in, he found that the situation was quite bad. Since Li Hong was hit by a car, her whole body was sent flying. Her uterus had ruptured and she was bleeding profusely. She had to get the baby out as soon as possible. Sun Huiya heard about the situation and quickly came over. Looking at Li Hong, who had fainted from the pain, Su Qing-sang voiced her opinion. "Director Sunday, the pregnant woman's uterus ruptured. We have to do the surgery as soon as possible. And, I know, in such a situation, the pregnant woman's uterus might not be able to be saved. They had to do everything they could to save the baby." Su Qing-sang and Sun Huiya had been working together a lot lately. They both knew what the other was thinking. After the surgery and emergency treatment, Li Hong's baby was finally separated from the mother's body. The baby is in good condition. Send it to the incubator for observation. After making sure that the baby was fine, Su Qing-sang and Sun Huiya started to do emergency treatment for Li Hong. Not only her, but 2 doctors from the surgery department also came to help. After the C-section, Sun Huiya checked the condition of the uterus and said with a serious face, "Qing-sang, I'm afraid her uterus can't be saved." The uterus was ruptured and bleeding profusely. It had to be removed. However, Sun Huiya had been a doctor for many years and had seen many cases. Li Hong had just given birth to a daughter. If Li Hong had a son before, it would be fine. What if it was her only child? It would be fine if the parents didn't value boys over girls. If the parents did, they would come to the hospital and cause a scene. "Qing-sang, you don't need to worry about this. You can go now. I'll take care of the rest." They had been working in a hospital for a long time and were considered senior staff. However, Su Qing-sang was different. She had only been working in the hospital for less than 3 months. She was still in her internship. If the family of the patient caused a scene, the hospital wouldn't do anything to them. However, Su Qing-sang wouldn't be able to escape. "Director Sun, don't say anything. I won't leave. Let's finish this surgery first." She would be lying if she said she wasn't touched. She had been working in a hospital for less than 2 months. She was happy that Sun Huiya was so considerate of her. However, she didn't think she did anything wrong. The most important thing was that Li Hong's life was still in danger. If there was anything else, it could wait until Li Hong was saved. After 3 hours of emergency treatment, Li Hong's life was finally saved. When Su Qing-sang walked out of the surgery room, Li Hong's family was already there. This time, they didn't look as fierce as last time. The leader was Li Hong's husband. He looked anxious. "Doctor, are my wife and son okay?" Su Qing-sang looked at the man in front of her. She raised her eyebrows slightly when she heard the word son. Your wife is fine. She just gave birth to a daughter for you. Both of them are safe now. What? Daughter? The anxious look on Li Hong's husband's face disappeared immediately. How can it be a daughter? I went to the master, and he said it was a son. Su Qingsang wanted to say that Li Hong's uterus had been removed, and she couldn't have a child anymore. However, before she could say anything, she was shocked by what Li Hong's husband did next. Damn it. The master said it was a son. How did it turn out to be a daughter? No, I'm going to get even with him. Su Qingsang wanted to ask the man to go check on Li Hong and her daughter. To her surprise, Li Hong's husband ran out of the hospital without looking back. She had been working in a hospital for many years and had seen a lot of things. However, Su Qingsang didn't expect something like this to happen. She thought about it carefully and found it reasonable. If Li Hong's husband was a good person, he wouldn't allow his pregnant wife to blackmail others. However, Su Qingsang didn't know what to do now. She turned around and looked at Li Meilin. Take the pregnant woman back to the ward. Find 2 volunteers to take care of her. Li Hong's husband didn't look like he would take care of his wife. I know. Li Meilin nodded. Before she left, she looked at Su Qingsang worriedly. Dr. Su, I think I need to warn you. What? The pregnant woman's family is not to be trifled with. They still don't know that her uterus has been removed. If they find out, Li Meilin didn't finish her sentence, but Su Qingsang understood what she meant. She patted Su Qingsang's shoulder. Don't worry. They signed it. They signed it. Plus, it was a critical situation. I had to do it. If they want to get even with me, I'll reason with them. If they didn't reason with her, she wouldn't be able to do anything about it. She could just go through the legal process. Su Qingsang's plan was simple. Li Meilin wanted to persuade her, but Su Qingsang had already signed the papers and organized the surgery records. Su Qingsang waited until she got off work, but Li Hong's husband didn't come back to the hospital. She had seen this kind of situation before and wasn't a stranger to it. However, she still felt a little uncomfortable. She couldn't suppress the discomfort until she got home. Li Hong had woken up in the hospital, but she didn't know what she would do if she found out that her husband was in such a state. You're back? I came to see you. Su Qingsang's thoughts finally came to an end at the door. Not only did Hua Jinyao come back early today, but he also prepared the gifts she was going to give her tomorrow. Come have a look. This is for your mother, this is for Su Yusin, and this is for Grandpa. It's not a birthday gift. I've ordered a birthday gift for someone else. Send it directly to Lin City, and we'll bring it to the Li family the day after tomorrow. What is it? Su Qingsang looked at Hua Jinyao's proud face and asked curiously, What did you prepare? I'm not telling you. Anyway, I can tell you. Grandpa will love it. It's not a parrot, is it? Do you think I'm like you? Hua Jinyao raised his eyebrows slightly and said teasingly, What's wrong with me? Su Qingsang didn't think that she gave the wrong bird. That parrot was so smart. It could even quarrel with people. Unknowingly, it would make the Hua family more lively. Old Master Hua wouldn't be lonely because of it. How nice would that be? How dare you say that my parrot is a bad gift? Su Qingsang looked fierce. If Hua Jinyao said yes, she would fight him to the death. Hua Jinyao raised his hands and surrendered. I was wrong. How could a gift for my wife be bad? Of course, it's the best gift. That's more like it. Su Qingsang smiled. Since Hua Jinyao had bought the gifts, she couldn't think of anything better. Moreover, she couldn't think of anything better. So naturally, she gave the gift according to what Hua Jinyao had bought. After dinner, she packed up her belongings and put away the gifts. They had a home in Lin City, so they didn't need to bring too many things. It was just one suitcase for 2 people. Su Qingsang was happy when she thought that she could go back to Lin City tomorrow. She temporarily forgot about the episode in the hospital. The next day, Su Qingsang got up very early. Yang Wenchong came to the house early in the morning. He was responsible for driving Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang to the hospital today. After all, she had raised Su Peijian for more than 20 years. It would be a lie to say that she had no feelings for Su Peijian. But look at Su Peijian's behavior. Ever since she left the Su family, she hadn't even called her once, let alone visited her. No matter what, She was still her adoptive mother, right? After more than 20 years of affection, Su Peijian could be so cold-blooded. Should she, as an elder, take the initiative to contact Su Peijian? Li Qianxue couldn't do such a thing. She was also a person with her own pride. If Su Peijian didn't treat her as a mother, why should she treat her as a daughter? If Sister Peijian comes to celebrate Grandpa's birthday, then if she comes, she will naturally still be a daughter of the Su family. She will be a daughter of the Su family, but not her daughter. After all, old Master Li had doted on Su Peijian for so many years. If Su Peijian had a conscience, she would come tomorrow. However, if she really didn't come, then Li Qianxue really didn't want to recognize this daughter anymore. Su Yusin didn't speak. During this period, he had actually tried to contact Su Peijian, but unfortunately, Su Peijian hadn't responded to him. She didn't pick up his calls, and she didn't reply to his messages. He even sent her an email, but he didn't get the slightest response. He knew that Su Peijian still couldn't accept the fact that she wasn't Li Qianxue's child. However, some things, since they had already happened, could only be accepted. If she continued to be like this, Su Yusin would actually feel very embarrassed. Because at the mention of Su Peijian, Li Qianxue noticed that Su Yusin's tone wasn't very good. However, soon, she heard from Xiaoyu that Su Qingsang had arrived. Li Qianxue immediately smiled. She quickly went downstairs. Su Qingsang had told Li Qianxue her flight time before, and she had specially sent someone to pick Su Qingsang up. Now that she was back, old Master Li was very happy. However, he didn't forget to look behind her. "Where's Jinyao?" "Grandpa, Jinyao has something to do with the company, but he promised me that he will fly over as soon as he is done." Su Qingsang didn't say when he would be busy. She had an intuition that this time, it wouldn't be so easy to solve. In fact, it wasn't that she didn't see that Hua Jinyao was acting strangely during this period. He obviously had more social engagements and spent more time on work. She could see the fatigue in his eyes, but she couldn't help him. "It's okay. It's good that you're back." Old Master Li hadn't seen Su Qingsang for a while and really missed this granddaughter. He looked up and down, and there was some dissatisfaction in his eyes. "Why do you look thinner? Is it because you're too tired?" "Of course not." Su Qingsang pinched her arm as she spoke. "I don't even know how much muscle has grown out, and you still say that I've lost weight. I think you've lost weight." Li Qianxue came downstairs. When she saw Su Qingsang, she also felt that her daughter had lost weight. "Is it because you're too tired from work?" "I don't think there's a time when you're not tired. In my opinion, you'd better change your job. It's really too hard to be a doctor." "Mom, I'm already doing very well. It's considered easy. Look at the hospital's emergency department and surgery department. Which department wasn't busier than the obstetrics and gynecology department? How is it easy?" Li Qianxue walked up to her daughter, took her hand, and looked her up and down. "I think you've lost weight. You don't have to be a doctor. Go to Hua Jinyao's company and get a free job as the young mistress of the Hua family." "Mom," Su Qingsang was about to laugh. "What can I do at his company? Bring tea and water to him?" He wouldn't dare. Li Qianxue was very protective. "My daughter isn't going to be his tea girl. Even if he's Hua Jinyao, he can't." Li Qianxue's eyes suddenly lit up. "That's right. Why don't I open a branch office in Rong City? You can work at the branch office." She thought it was a good idea. Su Qingsang quickly dissuaded her. "Mom, stop it. I'm not a business student. You said you'd open a company for me. What can I do if you really open a company? Then you'll just sit and watch others work." "Mom." Su Qingsang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why didn't she know that Li Qianxue had such a reckless side? "Aren't you afraid that I'll make the company close down? So be it. We'll open another one then." Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore. Now she could really understand why Su Peijian used to be so arrogant. With such a doting attitude, it would be strange if the child didn't become unruly. "Mom, don't worry. I'll definitely take good care of my body. These days, there are indeed a little more things to do in the hospital. But don't worry, after this period, it shouldn't be so busy. After all, the country had just allowed the second child not long ago. It was normal for the hospital to have a few more children. After this period, she believed that she wouldn't be so busy." "That's what you said." Li Qianxue looked at Su Qingsang, afraid that she was lying to her. When the time comes, if you don't gain some weight and gain some weight, I won't be satisfied. I promise. Su Qingsang raised her hand and saluted. Not only Li Qinxue, but even Old Master Li and Su Yusen laughed. Su Qingsang took out the gift that Hu Jinyao had prepared. What the gift was not important to Old Master Li and the others at all. What was important was the intention of his granddaughter. The atmosphere of the family was quite harmonious and beautiful. In such an atmosphere, Su Qingsang put aside the little bit of melancholy that Hu Jinyao couldn't be with her all the time. On the other side, Hu Jinyao and Yang Wenchang returned to the company. They went upstairs, but before they could enter the office, they were blocked by someone. He Xianyao and Ding Qing stood opposite each other. He Xianyao seemed to want to go to Hu Jinyao's office. Ding Qing was blocking He Xuanyao's way. I told you, President Hua isn't here today. I don't believe you. I heard you on the phone just now. Didn't he say that he would be back soon? It's been so long. He should be back, right? President Hua really didn't come back. Before Ding Qing could finish, Hu Jinyao and Yang Wenchang arrived. Seeing that it was him, He Xianyao gave Ding Qing a hateful glare, then rushed up to him. Hu Jinyao. She might be really angry because her tone wasn't very nice. Not only did she not call him President Hua, but she also didn't call him Brother Jinyao. Hu Jinyao still had work to deal with, so he didn't have time to deal with this spoiled girl. He didn't expect that He Xianyao would stand in front of him again when he was about to walk past her to enter the office. Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao looked at He Xianyao in front of him with cold eyes. What do you want? Can't I come to you if I don't have anything to say? He Xuanyao's voice was full of grievance when she said that. In fact, she couldn't stand it anymore after working at Tianyu Group. She didn't expect Hu Jinyao to be so cruel. He demoted her to the marketing department and said that she was going to study. The so-called study was being tortured by her ugly and bad-tempered boss every day. He said that she was doing market research, but he made her stand outside in the cold wind. She didn't see anyone, and she had to wait outside for people to come and do questionnaires. Chapter 513. Moreover, He Xianyao didn't believe that the headquarters of Tianyu Group needed someone to do a questionnaire. If their company wanted to collect data, they already had professionals. Not to mention a big company like Tianyu Group. She didn't want to do it, so the ugly man told her to get out. She didn't want to leave. At least, she didn't want to leave like this. She hadn't proven her ability in front of Hu Jinyao. How could she leave? It wasn't easy for her. She had to beg people to collect the data. The ugly man said that the data she collected couldn't be trusted and that there was too little data. What did that mean? If he didn't deliberately make things difficult for her, then He Xianyao would really be an idiot. Today was the same thing. He said that the data from a few days ago didn't count and forced her to investigate again. He Xianyao had an argument with her boss downstairs. After the argument, she said that she wanted to resign and left. However, when she really came out, she thought of what Lu Tongjia had told her and didn't want to leave. After thinking about it, she had to go upstairs to find Hu Jinyao and ask for an explanation from him. In what capacity? Hu Jinyao's voice was indifferent. He looked at He Xianyao impolitely. I'm just looking for you. Do I still need your status? He Xianyao was furious. What else? Hu Jinyao looked at He Xianyao as if she was an idiot. If you came to me as an employee, then you can write a report and give it to your boss. He can give it to me. If you came to me as a private person, then I'm sorry. I have nothing to say to you, and I have nothing to say to you. Hu Jinyao. He Xianyao had been pampered since she was a child. All the grievances she had suffered came from Hu Jinyao. Why do you have to treat me like this? I just like you. You like me, so I should let you like me. What kind of logic was that? Besides, I have a wife. Don't you know? She doesn't deserve you. Speaking of this, He Xianyao was very unconvinced. Even Annie doesn't like her. How can a woman like her deserve you? She doesn't deserve you, but you do. Hu Jinyao glanced at He Xianyao coldly and said, It seems that Missy didn't look at herself in the mirror before going out. He Xianyao was on the verge of tears. She had never expected Hu Jinyao to be so vicious. No matter what, I'm Li Juanxing's cousin. You have such a good relationship with my cousin. Is this how you bully me? Junsheng is Junsheng, and you are you. If you continue to pester me so unreasonably, I won't give face to Lian Junsheng anymore. His expression told He Xianyao that he was telling the truth. He was serious. She burst into tears, turned around, and left without looking back. Yang Wenchang and Ding Qing were still standing there when she was talking to Hu Jinyao. The only difference was that Yang Wenchang already knew that He Xianyao would be put in a difficult position. In fact, he was the one who asked Zhang to do it. Apparently, it was the first time that Ding Qing had seen Hu Jinyao like that. She stood there without moving, staring at Hu Jinyao. So, he was this ruthless to other women? Ding Qing didn't expect that. Recently, Hu Jinyao hadn't been gentle to her, but he had been polite. After all, she was confident in her abilities. Occasionally, Hu Jinyao would praise her for doing a good job. Only now did she realize that he was being polite when he was usually cold. Hu Jinyao came back to his senses and found that his secretary was in a daze. He frowned slightly and said, "Secretary Ding, is there anything else?" "I'm sorry, President Hu." Ding Qing apologized immediately. "I'm really sorry. I tried to stop her, but she just didn't want to listen to me." "It's okay. It's not your fault." Hu Jinyao thought of the phone call earlier. He wasn't in the mood to deal with He Xianyao. If she wanted to stay, she had to follow the rules of Tianyu Group. If she wanted to leave, he would be more than happy to let her go. "By the way, President Hu, I've put the documents on your desk. You see, I'll go now." Hu Jinyao strode toward his office. Ding Qing narrowed her eyes and stopped thinking. She quickly followed Hu Jinyao into his office. Old Master Li's birthday wasn't a birthday celebration, so he didn't plan to make it a big one. He only invited Old Master Li's cousin, Old Master Li, and his great-aunt. They also invited their children and grandchildren. It was about the same as the last time Su Qingsang invited them. Although Li Qianxue prepared a room for Su Qingsang, she thought that Hu Jinyao would come back with her. Hu Jinyao didn't come back, so she dragged Su Qingsang to sleep with her. The mother and daughter chatted for the whole night. They were so close that Su Yusin still looked jealous when he got up and left the room this morning. "Mom, you're so biased. Now that my sister is back, you're ignoring me." Li Qianxue looked at her son's jealous face and reached out to poke his forehead. "How old are you? Why are you still jealous of your sister? Don't you think that you're both boys? Why? Do you still need your mother to coax you to sleep?" Su Yusin hooked his arm around Li Qianxue's arm. "Mom, I'm just jealous." "What? You're the only one who can be biased, but I can't be jealous?" Su Qingsang was amused. "Don't be jealous. I'll be leaving in 2 days anyway. I'll return Mom to you then." She suddenly turned serious and looked at Su Yusin with a sad face. "Speaking of which, if brother doesn't like me coming back, then I won't come back next time." No. I just said it casually." Su Yusin quickly reached out to put his arm around her shoulder. "Sister, don't take it seriously." Su Qingsang looked at his hand on her shoulder and suddenly laughed. "Yes, I'm also joking. Don't take it seriously." "Well, you actually scared me." When Su Yusin spoke, he wanted to tickle Su Qingsang. How could Su Qingsang let him do what he wanted? After a cry, she quickly ran downstairs. Su Yusin hurriedly followed behind. Li Qianxue looked at her 2 children laughing and joking like this, as if the previous gap of more than 20 years did not exist. She curled her lips because of this recognition. The current state was very good. She liked the current state. If possible, she really hoped that Su Qingsang and Su Yusin would be by her side forever. However, she also knew that that could only be her wishful thinking. After Su Qingsang got married, she would be a member of the Hua family in the future. Su Yusin was still young, even though he had already been recommended. Although he had been recommended, he still had to go to school in the future. After the children grew up and left, she would be alone again. This thought disappeared when she went downstairs and saw Su Yusin and Su Qingsang sitting together. Chapter 514. After breakfast, Su Qingsang sat with Old Master Li for a while, then used the bathroom as an excuse to hide and call Hu Jinyao. Today was Old Master Li's birthday. She wanted to see if he could make it. When Hu Jingyao didn't show up last night, she knew that he wouldn't be able to make it. She believed that he had important business matters to attend to since he didn't return to Lin City with her to celebrate old Master Li's birthday. However, she still hoped that Hu Jingyao could rush over at the last minute. Although she had already guessed that Hu Jingyao might not be able to leave, Su Qingsang couldn't hide her nervousness when the call was connected. Jingyao, wife, I was so busy yesterday that I forgot to call you. I'm fine. Even through the phone, Su Qingsang could hear the hoarseness in his voice. Jingyao, are you okay? I'm fine. Hu Jingyao sounded more energetic than before. Honey, I'm afraid I can't come to celebrate Grandpa's birthday. It's okay. Grandpa won't mind. Yesterday, she didn't say anything definite in front of her grandfather. She only said that Hu Jingyao would rush over after finishing his work. He believed that Grandpa would understand. Take care of yourself. Don't get too tired. Su Qingsang thought for a moment and added, and remember to eat. I know. I will. The corners of Hu Jingyao's lips curled up slightly. Because of Su Qingsang's concern, he became much gentler. Honey, Hu Jingyao suddenly called her name. I miss you. They had only been apart for a day, but Hu Jingyao already missed her. If she was here, even if she didn't do anything, even if she didn't know anything, as long as she was by his side, he always felt a lot more at ease. Even if she couldn't help her in business, as long as she was in his arms, he would feel at ease. I missed you too. Her eyes were shining. It's okay. I'll be back in a couple of days. Yes, I'll be waiting for you. Hu Jingyao hung up the phone. His face was no longer as relaxed as before. He looked at the stack of documents in front of him, and his face was unprecedentedly serious. Li Qianxue confirmed the lunch menu with the kitchen again. When he came out, he found Su Qingsang hiding in the corridor and talking on the phone. By the time she saw it, she had already hung up. Mom. Su Qingsang walked towards her quickly. Are you looking for me? Are you calling Jingyao? How is it? Can he come over? Su Qingsang shook her head, looking a little guilty. Something urgent happened in his company, and he had to deal with it. That's why he couldn't make it. I'm fine. I understand. Li Qianxue held her hand and asked her to go to the living room with her. If he can't come, then so be it. In any case, the people who came today were all family members. You've seen many of them before. Yes, I know. My paternal grandfather and his descendants, as well as my paternal aunt and her descendants. Besides, he had seen them before, but he didn't interact much with them. It's good that they know each other. Anyway, they're relying on the Li family to live. His attitude toward you will definitely be very polite. If anyone is rude to you or gives you a hard time, don't hold it in. Just fight back. Don't think that she didn't know that many of those people had targeted Su Qingsang in the past, openly or secretly, although these things were related to her attitude in the past. But the past was the past, and now was the present. Now the situation was different. Of course, she wouldn't let anyone bully her daughter again. Not even the slightest bit of attitude was allowed. Mom, I know. Don't worry. They won't. Not to mention that she had acknowledged Li Qianxue now, just based on her identity as the wife of the president of Tianyu Group. As long as those people weren't stupid, they wouldn't think of provoking her, right? I know they won't, but I'm afraid that someone won't be smart. Li Qianxue patted Su Qingsang's hand. Anyway, remember, in this family, no one can make you feel wronged. Mom. Su Qingsang's eyes were a little sore and touched. She rubbed her face against Li Qianxue's shoulder. Her voice was very soft. You're going to spoil me. What's wrong with spoiling you? Li Qianxue didn't think she was going too far. I think it's too late. If she had known earlier, she would have loved her daughter earlier. How could things have developed to this point? She had missed so many years with her daughter. Li Qianxue was still upset that she hadn't discovered it earlier. She was gritting her teeth at Su Chenghui, who had caused this situation. However, as soon as she entered the living room with Su Qingsang, she saw a person who shouldn't have been there. Su Chenghui. Seeing that it was him, Li Qianxue's face immediately darkened. She glared at Su Chenghui with a cold face, as if she wanted to stare a hole in his body. Why are you here? Ever since they signed the divorce papers, The two of them hadn't seen each other for nearly 2 months. Because of Su Chenghui's resignation, the Li Corporation's business had been on her shoulders for a long time. Li Qinshua's ability wasn't bad, but the sudden increase of so much work also made her very tired. It was also because of this period of busy work that she didn't have time to think about Su Chenghui. It was very easy for her to know about him, but she didn't want to know. Even when her son or daughter mentioned this person in front of her, she would still be unhappy. Since he had already left, he was no longer here. There was no need for him to come back, let alone show up. If he wanted to see the children, he could just see them outside. This was good for both him and her. She didn't want to see this person. Now that she suddenly saw Su Chenghui, Li Qinshuo was really unhappy. The guests in this house hadn't arrived yet. What was Su Chenghui doing here? What are you doing here? Get out. You're not welcome here. Even in front of the two children, Li Qinshuo didn't mind making Su Chenghui lose face. In her opinion, she didn't need to give him face at all. After Li Qinshuo appeared, Su Chenghui's eyes were fixed on her. They hadn't seen each other for nearly 2 months, and she seemed to have lost a little weight. She looked good. Today was Old Master Li's birthday. She had put on light makeup. Because it was a family banquet, Li Qinshuo didn't wear a dress. She was wearing a simple red dress, festive and flamboyant. She was clearly in her 40s, but she was able to completely suppress such a gorgeous color. Just like her personality, she was clear about her likes and dislikes. Like a flame, people couldn't help but be attracted to her. Su Chenghui. Noticing that Su Chenghui was staring at her, Li Qinshuo felt even worse. What are you doing here? Today is Dad's birthday. Chapter 5:15. Who's your father? Li Qinshuo's eyes were unfriendly and her expression was cold. Su Chenghui's way of addressing her made her panic. What was he doing? Making connections? Su Chenghui looked at the aggressive Li Qinshuo and felt bitter in his heart. Qinshuo, no matter what, I've called your father father for more than 20 years. I also sincerely regard your father as my own father. Do you have to do this? Huh? Li Qinshuo sneered with a hint of mockery on her face. You regard my father as your father? So you tortured my father's daughter? Replaced my father's granddaughter? Su Chenghui, is this how you regard my father as your own father? Su Yusin and Su Qingsang both stood behind Li Qinshuo without moving. Old Master Li seemed to not hear Li Qinshuo's words. He just sat on the sofa and looked at the gift in front of him, which was brought by Su Chenghui. No one supported him. No one helped him. Su Chenghui stood there and found that he really seemed to have nothing to do with this family. Su Chenghui was speechless by Li Qinshuo. He knew that coming today would not end well, but he had to come. If he didn't come today, he didn't even know what kind of excuse he could find to see Li Qinshuo. You should go. I don't want to see you. Su Chenghui knew that if he wanted to save face, he should leave as soon as possible. However, looking at Li Qinshuo's beautiful face, he couldn't move his feet at all. He just stood on the ground and looked at Li Qinshuo, his eyes burning and his gaze fervent. The kind of gaze made Li Qinshuo feel disgusted again, and her tone was even more unfriendly than before. I said get out. Did you hear me? Li Qinshuo was really disgusted by the man in front of her. It was so disgusting that when she thought of what Su Chenghui had done, she wanted to bite him a few times to vent her anger. Su Chenghui stood there without moving, just staring at Li Qinshuo. That gaze gave Li Qinshuo goosebumps. It was not because she was touched, but because she was disgusted. She was about to ask someone to come over and drive Su Chenghui out, but Su Yusin took a step forward and stood in front of Su Chenghui. Dad, Li Qinshuo didn't want to see Su Chenghui, but Su Yusin couldn't have the same attitude as Li Qinshuo. When Su Chenghui came in, he noticed that he didn't seem to be having a good time. Today, Su Chenghui had specially cleaned himself up for Old Master Li's birthday. If he hadn't cleaned himself up, he would have looked even worse. After all, they were father and son. Su Yusin didn't want to see his father like this. It made him sad. Dad, how have you been lately? You don't seem to have rested well. His eyes were red, and even though his clothes were neat and tidy, he still looked somewhat dispirited. Su Chenghui looked at Su Yusin, his eyes full of gratitude. I've had a lot of things to do in the past 2 days. It'll be fine once I get over it. Dad, you have to take care of yourself. Su Yusin was trying to give Su Chenghui a way out. After saying that, he didn't forget to look at Li Qianxue, his eyes a little pleading. Li Qianxue turned her face away from Su Yusin. She was still angry and hoped that Su Chenghui would leave. She didn't want to see him. Su Yusin could only look at Su Qingsang again. Su Qingsang received her brother's gaze and sighed deeply in her heart. Dad, have you had breakfast yet? As Su Qingsang spoke, she blinked at Su Chenghui. No. Su Chenghui looked at Su Qingsang. He didn't expect it. At a time like this daughter, who had never been close to him, was actually willing to help him once. He looked at Su Qingsang and felt a little hot in his eyes. I just saw that there was a lot of breakfast left in the kitchen. Dad, if you don't mind, why don't you go and eat some? Su Qingsang looked at Su Chenghui with a particularly sincere look in her eyes. It's not good for your stomach if you don't eat breakfast. Dad, you'd better go and eat. Su Chenghui didn't move and looked at Li Qianxue again. How could Li Qianxue not see the look in her daughter's eyes just now? She didn't expect that both Su Qingsang and Su Yusin would stand on Su Chenghui's side. She couldn't tell what she felt in her heart. When she met her daughter's slightly pleading eyes, she turned her face away with hatred. If it was only Su Yusin who said it, she could pretend that she didn't hear it. But Su Qingsang, Li Qianxue almost couldn't bear to refuse any of her requests now. Dad, you should go and eat quickly. As Su Qingsang spoke, she glanced at Su Yusin. Yusin, who didn't eat much just now, why don't you eat some with Dad? Okay. Su Yusin immediately understood what Su Qingsang meant. Ignoring Su Chenghui, who was still standing there in a daze, he took him in the direction of the dining room. Su Chenghui's footsteps were a little hesitant, but he was pulled to the dining room by Su Yusin. The figures of Su Chenghui and his son disappeared around the corner. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qingsang with a complicated look in her eyes. Mom. Su Qingsang knew that she was unhappy, so she took the initiative to hook her hand. You see, our family doesn't lack breakfast, right? Li Qianxue didn't speak. She wanted to wait for Su Chenghui to finish eating and then drive him away. It wasn't that she was cruel, nor was it that she was too much. It was just that when she thought of what Su Chenghui had done, she really didn't want to see him, not at all. Li Qianxue had a good idea. She wanted to drive Su Chenghui away, but she didn't expect that he hadn't finished eating yet. The guests came. Great-grandfather Li, her great-aunt, and their children. They were relatives, and Li Qianxue didn't want to lose face in front of these relatives. In the end, after Su Chenghui finished eating, he actually stayed and didn't leave. And she couldn't drive him away even if she wanted to. After all, with so many relatives here, she couldn't drive Su Chenghui out in front of so many people, could she? The noon banquet was quite lively. The older Old Master Li got, the more he liked to see his children and grandchildren in front of him. The group of people had a lively lunch. Throughout the whole process, except for Su Qingsang and her brother, Su Chenghui had been by Old Master Li's side. He looked like the son-in-law of the Li family. Su Qingsang and Su Yusin glanced at each other from time to time. No matter what happened between Li Qianxue and Su Chenghui, at least the two of them still regarded Su Chenghui as a member of the family. Some relatives didn't know the inside story and thought that Li Qianxue and Su Chenghui were still together. Previously, there was a lot of talk about divorce, but no matter what, they had been husband and wife for so many years. From the looks of it, it was clear that they quarreled at the head of the bed and reconciled at the end. In particular, Li Qianxue's cousin-in-law looked at the two of them with the eyes of an experienced person. The meaning of that look was self-evident. Li Qianxue was so angry that she had a headache. If it weren't for the fact that there were guests, she would have gone up to Su Chenghui and torn that smug smile off his face. In fact, Su Chenghui was not smug at all. Although he was accompanying Old Master Li, he was not a fool. He could see that neither Old Master Li nor Li Qianxue liked him. However, there were guests at home now, and they didn't want to fall out with him in front of the guests, so they tolerated him. Su Chenghui was still following Old Master Li even after the guests left. Su Qingsang and Su Yusin could tolerate it and continue to be a harmonious family with Su Chenghui. But Li Qianxue didn't want to tolerate it. She had tolerated Su Chenghui for a whole day. She wanted to go up and ask Su Chenghui to get out. However, after a day of silence on this matter, Old Master Li finally opened his mouth. Chenghui, come with me. Since Old Master Li had spoken, Li Qianxue couldn't kick him out even if she wanted to. She could only watch Su Chenghui follow Old Master Li upstairs with hatred. After entering the study, Old Master Li laid out the chessboard, looked at Su Chenghui, and said in a calm voice, I haven't played chess with you for a while. Let's play a game. Su Chenghui looked at Old Master Li. He didn't think that Old Master Li was still in the mood to play chess with him. However, he still sat down across from Old Master Li. Old Master Li went first with a white piece, then looked at Su Chenghui, indicating for him to continue. The two of them played back and forth. Halfway through the game, Old Master Li suddenly stopped moving his chess piece. You have a plan in mind, and you have a strategy when you play. Chenghui, your chess skills are much better than before. Su Chenghui was silent. He hadn't had time to play chess in the past 2 months. What Old Master Li said sounded like a sarcastic remark to him. What? Do you think I'm lying to you? Old Master Li sighed and put down the chess piece in his hand. Chenghui, you used to play chess well, but there were always some vacillations, just like you. I've always known that you didn't know what you wanted before, and you didn't know what was most important to you. But now, looking at your way of playing, you seem to know. Su Chenghui's eyes were a little hot. He looked at Old Master Li and said in a hoarse voice, Dad, I was wrong. Old Master Li raised his hand and didn't want to hear Su Chenghui say this. Chenghui, I don't want to judge whether you were wrong or not. Do you regret it? I don't want to know. I just want to tell you. Life is like chess. There are no regrets. Since you have done some things, you have to bear the consequences. Dad, it doesn't matter if you regret it or know that you were wrong. These things have nothing to do with Qianxue now. Dad? Su Chenghui looked up at him with an indescribable pain in his eyes. I really regret it. Chenghui, not all regrets have a chance to do it again. The expression on Old Master Li's face was painful and regretful. In the past, I focused on expanding my business. I always thought that I wanted to make the Li Corporation bigger and stronger. But I really made it big and strong. The person who could share it with me is gone. I often regret it and often reflect on it. I always think that if I were young and didn't focus on business like this, I wouldn't have focused on my career every day. If I didn't focus on my career every day, would Qianxue's mother have lived a few more years? But there's no answer. She's dead. She's gone. No matter how much I regret it, it's useless. Su Chenghui didn't speak. Some things were blinded by a leaf. If he didn't remove the leaf, how could he find out what he really thought? I'm very happy that you still remember my birthday today. I think you too. But you and Qianxue are just like this. Just like what? He didn't say the rest, but Su Chenghui understood what Old Master Li meant. His expression suddenly changed again. Chapter 516. Dada, that's all. Old Master Li looked at Su Chenghui with a complicated look in his eyes. There was a hint of regret in his eyes. Qianxue, and I won't stop you from seeing the children, but you and Qianxue don't need to see each other anymore. Su Chenghui's face was pale. He was already in his 40s. He had experienced a lot of storms and waves, but at this moment, he was like a greenhorn, completely at a loss of what to do. Old Master Li and Su Chenghui had been friends for so many years. Although he couldn't bear it, he didn't care. But during this period of time, he could really see it. His daughter didn't miss Su Chenghui at all. As long as his daughter had the slightest bit of nostalgia, he would give Su Chenghui a chance so that he and Li Qianxue could have another possibility. However, Li Qianxue had made it clear that she didn't want to see Su Chenghui. Since that was the case, why should he force her? He looked at the chessboard. You've won this round. You don't have to play the rest. He won? He had clearly lost, and he had lost completely. Su Chenghui stood up and went downstairs like a ghost. When he went downstairs, Li Qianxue was in the living room, asking people to clean up the mess. She was sitting next to Su Qingsang, talking about something. Su Qingsang saw him coming downstairs and quickly stood up. This time, Su Chenghui ignored her and walked straight to Li Qianxue. Can I talk to you for a minute? No. Li Qinxue sat there without moving. I have nothing to say to you. Qinxue. Su Changhui gritted his teeth so hard that his gums almost bled. Just 5 minutes. Can I? No. Li Qinxue looked up at him, her eyes cold. I don't want to give you a minute. His heart felt like it had been pierced by another arrow. Su Qinghui's voice was pleading. Qinxue, sister. Su Yusin had just come back from sending a guest. She didn't know how long he had been in the room, but he looked at Su Qingsang. You just came back yesterday. I forgot to give you a present. Come upstairs with me to get it. Su Qingsang glanced at him. Even if he didn't call her, she was going to leave. Mom, take a seat first. I'll go upstairs to get the gift. Su Qingsang followed Su Yusin upstairs. Before leaving, Su Yusin glanced at Uncle Zhang and motioned for him to ask the servants in the living room to leave first. Uncle Zhang was also very perceptive. With a wave of his hand, the rest of the people left. Li Qinxue sat there, feeling a little stifled. She looked at Su Qinghui and said, Su Changhui, are you very proud now? He had been away from home for so long, yet there were still people who stood by him. Qinxue, I feel very uncomfortable right now. Su Changhui couldn't be smug in front of her at all. Really, I feel very uncomfortable. The assets you get after our divorce should be enough for you to find a good hospital, right? Li Qinxue's words were rather blunt. Or, have you already spent all your money in just 2 months? It's okay, I can still afford it. Go ahead. How much do you want? She was treating Su Changhui like a beggar. Su Changhui clenched his fists, and his voice was low and hoarse with bitterness. Qinxue, I'm not here to ask you for money. Then what do you want? Li Qinxue turned her face to look at him with an impatient expression. Don't say that you regret it. After you left me, you suddenly realized that you fell in love with me. So you want to get back together with me? Su Chinghui was rendered speechless by her words and couldn't continue. What could he say? Could he say that he wanted to get back together with her? What he could say was that he only realized after losing her that he fell in love with her, couldn't live without her, and wanted to start over with her. Qinxue, don't be like this. I do regret it. Qinxue, I'm sincere to you, Su Chenghui. Li Qinxue stood up and stared straight at his face. Her gaze was cold and filled with disdain. Can you be more shameless? Qinxue, in order to return to the Li family, you really can tell any lie? Li Qinxue didn't believe him at all. In her opinion, this was just one of Su Qinghui's tricks. Qinxue, I want to come back, but not to the Li family. I want to return to your side. Li Qinxue couldn't take it anymore. Return to my side? I'm representing the Li family now. Don't you know? Su Qinghui knew that she had a deep misunderstanding of him. That's enough. Li Qinxue stood up. Su Qinghui, if you still have any dignity, then get as far away as you can. Don't appear in front of me. As for what you said, I'm sorry, but I don't believe a word you said, or even a punctuation mark. So you don't have to say anything. Li Qinxue turned around and was about to leave. Su Qinghui was anxious and reached out to grab her hand. Qinxue, what I said is true. What I said is also true. Li Qinxue wanted to pull her hand out, but Su Qinghui was very strong. She was in a bad mood, and her face darkened. Su Qinghui, I'm warning you, don't be so shameless. For the sake of the children, I don't want to make things difficult for you. But don't force me to do things to the extreme. To be honest, she was actually disappointed at this point today. However, this disappointment was not for Su Qinghui, but for Su Peijian. Su Changhui obviously had a purpose for coming here. She wouldn't think that his arrival was sincere for Old Master Li's birthday. She was really disappointed in Su Peijian. She had raised her for more than 20 years, even if she wasn't her biological daughter. But for so many years, whether it was her or Old Master Li, their care and care for her were sincere. However, on a day like today, Su Peijian didn't even call, let alone visit the Old Master. Su Peijian was indeed Su Qinghui's daughter. She inherited the cold side of his personality. No matter how good he was to her, it was useless. Therefore, she didn't notice how passionate Su Qinghui's eyes were, nor did she care that Su Qinghui's eyes were full of love when he looked at her. Qingsang, I'm sorry I used to that. Su Qingsang wasn't there to listen to Su Qinghui's apology. Besides, he had already said, "May I ask, are you really in love with Mom?" Su Chinghui was stunned for a moment. He looked at Su Qingsang with a bitter expression. "You don't believe me either?" He knew that he was wrong. He also knew that his past behavior was indeed a bad record. However, until today, no one was willing to believe his words, and no one was willing to stand on his side. This made Su Changhui depressed. He was also annoyed, but more than that, he felt bitter. "No, I believe you." In fact, Su Qingsang had guessed it a long time ago. If Su Chinghui really didn't love Li Qianxue, he would have divorced Xiang Kaiping after she appeared. After all, if he really loved Xiang Kaiping as much as he said, he would have been with her a long time ago. Secondly, if he really loved Xiang Kaiping that much, why would he be threatened by Li Qianxue to marry her? Qingsang, I believe you. Su Qingsang thought of Li Qianxue's expression just now. She reached out and put her hand on Su Chinghui's arm. "Dad, I believe that you really love Mom." Su Chinghui was a little emotional. He didn't expect that the person who would believe him now was the daughter he had never cared about. Chapter 517. Su Chenghui was only in his 40s. Seriously speaking, he was still very young. He still had many possibilities. Plans? What plans? Su Chenghui looked bitter. "I haven't thought about it yet. However, I have 2 friends who have been asking me to start company with them. I think I might go with them. I'm not asking you about business. I'm not asking you what you're going to do in the future. I'm asking you since you know that you love my mother. What plans do you have for the future? What plans can I have?" Su Changhui looked helpless. "Your mother hates me so much now. I can only stay away from her." As soon as Su Changhui finished speaking, he saw the disapproval in his daughter's eyes. "Dad," Su Qingsang really felt strange. How did Su Changhui, who had such a low EQ, become the general manager of the group for so many years? "Don't tell me you're really willing to never see me again? What else can I do? Your mother hates me so much now. Didn't you hate her too? You even swapped me with Su Peijian because you hated her." After saying that, Su Qingsang realized that her attitude was not right. She cleared her throat. "Dad, I don't blame you. I mean, if my mother wanted to, she could have spent more than 20 years softening you up and making you fall in love with her. Why can't you spend the rest of your life begging for my mother's forgiveness?" Su Chenghui looked at Su Qingsang in a daze, almost unable to understand what she meant. Was she trying to give him an idea? "Dad, think about it. You're only in your 40s this year. If you live to be 100 years old, you still have more than 50 years left. Are you really willing to have my mother disappear from your life? Are you really willing to be a stranger to my mother and never see each other again?" Su Qingsang's eyes were clear and full of sincerity. Su Changhui was almost bewitched by her words. "You mean, if you think that my mother's reaction today made you feel bad, you should give up? Then is your love for my mother real? Why is it that my mother can spend decades being ignored by you, but she still thinks of you and loves you wholeheartedly? Since my mother can spend such a long time to move you, then why don't you do it? You can take that long to move her. Even if my mom really didn't want to forgive you in the end, at least you tried." Su Qingsang really thought so. "Don't you think that even if you fail in the end, you still have a chance? But at least you've tried, right? At least you won't regret it. Not to mention, you're just doing what my mother did before. Humans are not plants. They're not emotionless." During this time, Su Qingsang had gotten to know Li Qianxue better. She believed that as long as Su Changhui showed his sincerity to Li Qianxue, he would be happy. Li Qianxue would always be touched by him. Even if he couldn't, he should at least give himself a chance, right? Hearing Su Qingsang's words, Su Chinghui's expression suddenly became eager. But after the fervor, it turned into bitterness. "What's the point? Your mother doesn't even want to see me now. She doesn't want to see you. You have to create opportunities for her to see you. As for why she's so resistant to you, didn't you also resist my mother for decades?" Su Chenghui didn't say anything. For the first time, he looked at Su Qingsang with a new and completely different gaze. She was his daughter. He had neglected her for many years and had almost never given her a trace of love. But it was this daughter who was still willing to give him ideas and think for him in his current situation. Waves of warmth surged in his heart, and emotions of gratitude surged in his heart. There was also a faint sense of guilt and self-blame. Su Qing-sang's words stopped there, and she didn't want to say more. If Su Qinghui wanted to, he naturally knew how to get Li Qianxue back. If his love was just lip service, then it didn't matter whether he worked hard or not. After all, Li Qianxue was still young. If she left Su Qinghui, a man who didn't really love her, she still had a chance to find another man. It was also a good ending for both of them to be happy. Qing sang, "Thank you." Su Qinghui thanked Su Qing-sang sincerely. By now, he could no longer simply treat Su Qing-sang as a child. She was not only a daughter who had been neglected by him, but also an adult who had grown up, matured, and had her own independent thinking and opinions. "Dad," Su Qing-sang smiled. "You're my dad. You don't need to thank me." She said that she didn't need to thank him, but Su Qinghui was really grateful to this daughter. She didn't resent him for being changed. Instead, she could even care about him. He looked at Su Qing-sang and he thought of his other daughter, Su Peijian. He had doted on Su Peijian for so many years, but what did Su Peijian do? Until now, she hadn't even called him or sent him any news. From the looks of it, it seemed that she didn't want him, her father. In comparison, he was not as good as Su Qing-sang. Su Qing-sang said these words today. Although it couldn't be said to be enlightened, it really gave him some confidence. Su Qinghui didn't say that he didn't know what he should do. He knew, but at this time, Su Qing-sang's words were undoubtedly the greatest encouragement to him. "I didn't do anything." Su Qing-sang smiled. She knew that Su Qinghui had already made up his mind. He just needed someone to help him again. Su Qinghui looked at the smile on Su Qing-sang's face and suddenly reached out to hug her. This time, it was Su Qing-sang's turn to be stunned. Su Qinghui had never hugged her since she was a child. Su Qinghui's eyes were slightly warm. This was his daughter. He quickly let go of his hand. He felt a little uncomfortable seeing Su Qing-sang's shocked expression. "Qing-sang, I know that when you married Hu Jinyao, it was also an accident. Although my current ability can't be compared to Tanya Group, if one day he makes you feel wronged, you must tell me. I will definitely teach that brat a good lesson." "Dad." Su Qing-sang now knew why Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue were together. With such a domineering and protective manner, was this really the only one in the family and no other branch? "Don't worry. Hu Jinyao is quite good." Su Qinghui didn't say anything. He could more or less tell whether Hu Jinyao was good or not. At this moment, he was a little envious. Hu Jinyao was much better than him in this regard. From the beginning, he had a clear goal and knew what he wanted. On the other hand, he had been muddle-headed for so many years before he came to his senses. In comparison, he was really too inferior to Hu Jinyao. Chapter 518. Su Qinghui thought it through and left. Su Qing-sang looked at his back and didn't know if what she did was right or wrong. After all, that man was her father. She couldn't bear to hurt him. More importantly, if he really loved Li Qianxue, why didn't he give himself and Li Qianxue a chance? However, thinking of Li Qianxue, she hesitated. If Li Qianxue couldn't forgive Su Qinghui in the end, she would probably blame her. "Don't worry, Mom won't blame you." No one knew when Su Yusin had arrived. He sat down next to Su Qing-sang. "Did you hear that?" "Yes." Su Yusin nodded. Although he was young, he wasn't really a child. "Sister, don't worry. Even if Mom is really unhappy, she won't be mad at you. I can't do anything if she's really angry." Su Qing-sang couldn't bear to hurt Su Qinghui. Not only her, but Su Yusin also hoped that the family could be as good as before. She just didn't know what Li Qianxue would do. Rong City. Hu Jinyao had just gotten off the phone with Su Qing-sang, but he wasn't as calm as he appeared to be in front of her. He looked at Yang Wenchong with a sullen face. "What do you mean by Qiao Hong is missing?" "I asked someone to keep an eye on the Qiao family, but Qiao Hong hasn't gone out these days." Later, I asked someone to knock on the door under the pretext of collecting property fees, but he wasn't home. I checked the surveillance footage and found that he left last night in disguise. Yang Wenchong blamed himself for not doing a good job. He didn't expect that there would be a time when he would make a mistake. Hu Jinyao waved his hand. There were indeed a lot of things to do in the company. Working with Ikes was one thing, but the Hua brothers kept playing dirty tricks and making trouble for him from time to time was another. What was more serious was that the data of the new product developed by Hua Jinyao's company for the next quarter was stolen by Qiao Hong, one of Hua Jinyao's subordinates. That was the reason why Hua Jinyao didn't have time to go to Lin City with Su Qingsang. He went back to the company and asked someone to keep an eye on Qiao Hong. They didn't call the police for the time being because the launch of Tianyu Group's new product had reached a critical moment. They couldn't afford to make any mistakes. If Qiao Hong only wanted to use this to threaten him, he would have let it go. If Qiao Hong sold this to a rival company, thinking of this, Hua Jinyao's face darkened. President Hua, should we call the police? No. If this had nothing to do with the rival company, Tianyu would only make the situation more complicated. Sort out all of Qiao Hong's information and send it to my email. I'll send someone to find him. Yang Wenchang nodded and quickly left. Hua Jinyao took out his phone and started to make a call. Someone knocked on the door. Hua Jinyao thought it was Yang Wenchang, but it was Ding Qing. President Hua. She walked quickly to Hua Jinyao with a document in her hand. I looked into it and asked the people who work with Qiao Hong. Qiao Hong's neighbor heard that Qiao Hong had a girlfriend. The two of them had planned to get married. But something happened recently. What happened? Hua Jinyao was impressed by Ding Qing's efficiency, which was very rare. Ding Qing was the first one to find out that Qiao Hong had gone missing with the company's confidential information. Although she came to the project later, Zhang Yang had been involved in it. Therefore, Ding Qing knew something about the project after she arrived. Qiao Hong's girlfriend has uremia. He needs a kidney transplant. It's too expensive for him to afford. So it must be a mistake. Hua Jinyao frowned. He didn't agree with Ding Qing's statement. Tianyu Group had great benefits. If Qiao Hong was in trouble, he could have explained the situation to the finance department instead of stepping on the company's bottom line. However, Hua Jinyao was relieved. As long as it wasn't a rival company or Hua Yifan and Hua Jinyao, it would be fine. I found the hospital where his girlfriend is staying. Ding Qing put the document on Hua Jinyao's desk. President Hua, do you want me to go there? Find Qiao Hong? I'll go myself. Hua Jinyao looked at the name of the hospital. What a coincidence. It was the first hospital where Su Qingsang worked. If Qiao Hong wants to exchange this for money, he'll know that we're looking for him. President Hua, I'm afraid that he won't tell the truth when he sees you. Ding Qing analyzed her opinion. Look, you're the boss, and he's your employee. If he does something like this, he'll be on the opposite side of you. So, I think it's better for me to go. Ding Qing's words made sense. Hua Jinyao didn't realize it until now. Ding Qing was new to the company. Everyone in Tianyu knew that Yang Wenchang worked for Hua Jinyao. Okay, you go there. It'll be great if you can find him. If you can't, it's okay. Yes. Ding Qing lowered her eyes. At this moment, she looked extremely serious. Don't worry, President Hua. I'll find a way to persuade him to come back. Just try your best. Hua Jinyao knew that Ding Qing hadn't used her full ability yet. With such a subordinate, he wanted to know what Ding Qing was capable of. Ding Qing took the order and left. Not long after lunch, Ding Qing came back. Qiao Hong isn't here. I asked his girlfriend. His girlfriend doesn't know anything about him. She's sick, so I couldn't tell her everything. Ding Qing paused for a second. When she looked at Hua Jinyao and Yang Wenchang, she continued, but I used his girlfriend's phone as an excuse. Qiao Hong picked up. Both Hua Jinyao and Yang Wenchang looked at her, waiting for her next words. He promised me that he'd come out to see me tonight. Hua Jinyao and Yang Wenchang looked at each other, then at Ding Qing together. What time is it? Where is it? Blue night. Hua Jinyao's face darkened. He looked at Ding Qing together with Yang Wenchang. President Hua, you see, Ding Qing was still asking. Hua Jinyao knew that he couldn't let Ding Qing go there alone. Blue Night was a very famous nightclub in Rong City. It was the biggest money-squandering establishment in Rong City. Only members were allowed in there. People who weren't members couldn't get in. I'll go with you tonight. Hua Jinyao wanted to solve this problem before it got out of hand. Not only did he need to solve Qiao Hong's problem as soon as possible, but he also couldn't let the board of directors know. He especially couldn't let the Hua brothers know. After all, they had been up to too many tricks recently. Hua Jinyao didn't want the Hua brothers to have something on them. That night, before the appointed time, Hua Jinyao followed Ding Qing and Yang Wenchang to the entrance of Blue Night. Chapter 519. It's okay. The owner of Blue Night was the same as the owner of the Hot Spring Club. Thinking of what Su Qing had told him, Hua Jinyao decided to go there himself. That man had a powerful background. If anything happened, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. But if it was Yang Wenchang, things would be different. Find a place to park the car and wait for my call. I'll go in with Ding Hong. Hua Jinyao and Ding Qing got out of the car and walked to the gate of Blue Night together. Ding Qing seemed a little worried. She even hesitated. Hua Jinyao glanced at her and said, "It's okay. Just act normal." Ding Qing nodded. She looked at the magnificent signboard, then at Hua Jinyao and said, "President Hua, won't we be easily recognized if we go in like this?" Hua Jinyao stopped and glanced at Ding Qing. Because of what happened tonight, she wasn't wearing the professional suit she wore during the day. Instead, she was wearing a simple black dress and a beige windbreaker. He thought for a while, then said in a lower voice, "Come with me." Okay. Ding Qing was about 3 steps away from Hua Jinyao. Because of what he said, she quickened her pace and walked to his side. They walked a few steps side by side. There seemed to be a small stone on the road. Ding Qing suddenly twisted her foot. She lost her balance and fell towards Hua Jinyao. He had to reach out his hand to steady her. Ding Qing's face was pale. She looked around and found that no one was looking at them. She said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, President Hua. I was too careless." "It's okay." Hua Jinyao thought that Ding Qing did that because she was nervous. Besides, he also saw the stone on the road. "Can you stand still?" "I can." Ding Qing stood up, but her foot hurt a little. She sucked in a cold breath. She looked at Hua Jinyao. "President Hua, I think I sprained my foot." They were only a few steps away from the gate of Blue Night. Seeing that, Hua Jinyao reached out his arm and said, "Can you help me walk?" "This." Ding Qing hesitated. "I don't think it's a good idea. It won't be good if people misunderstand." "It's okay." Hua Jinyao was focused on the meeting with Xiao Hong. "It's just a show. Let's go." Ding Qing clenched her teeth, but at last, she took Hua Jinyao's arm. With Hua Jinyao's help, she didn't look abnormal when she walked. "Thank you, President Hua," Ding Qing said in a low voice. Hua Jinyao didn't take it to heart. After seeing Xiao Hong, "I'll take you to the doctor." "Thank you, President Hua. I'll go home and apply some ointment." Hua Jinyao didn't insist. The two of them entered the door together. What Hua Jinyao didn't notice was that a camera had captured the scene of the two of them walking into the Blue Night hand in hand. Lin City. Old Master Li's birthday was spent with a group of relatives at noon. In the evening, only his family would have dinner together. This year, it was quieter than in previous years. In the past, there was Su Changhui and Su Peijian. Today, the two of them were gone, but Su Qingsang was there. Her cooking skills were average, and she wasn't particularly good at it. However, ever since she married Hua Jinyao, she had put some effort into it. So today, she took the initiative to cook a bowl of noodles for the old man. "Grandpa, happy birthday to you." Hua Jinyao had already prepared Old Master Li's birthday present. It was a pine tree. It wasn't an ordinary pine tree. It was carved from a whole piece of jade. The gift was delivered in the morning. The jade was of high quality, and it was made by a master. The green color of the jade made the pine tree look especially tall and straight. It implied that Old Master Li would live as long as the Nanshan Mountain. It was obvious that the gift had been found with great effort. It was a good gift. Old Master Li liked it very much. However, no matter how good the gift was, it was a gift from Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang didn't know what else to give. After thinking for a while, she decided that cooking a bowl of noodles for Old Master Li was more appropriate. Good. Old Master Li looked at the noodles that his granddaughter brought out and said the word good 3 times in a row. Old Master Li didn't lack anything at the moment. For him, the most important thing was the thought. Many years ago, Li Qianxue had cooked for him to please Su Chenghui. It was the first time that he had eaten food cooked by a junior. even if it was just a simple bowl of noodles. Grandpa, I'm not good at cooking. Please don't blame me. Su Ching-sang's face was a little bitter. She wasn't particularly confident in her cooking. It looks delicious. Old Master Li was quite generous. Looking at the bowl of noodles, his eyes were full of admiration. This cooking can't be wrong. You try it first. After Su Ching-sang said that, she looked at Li Qianxue and said, Mom, there's more in the kitchen. Do you want to try it too? Okay. Li Qianxue's eyes were a little red. Su Peijian didn't do any chores, and Su Yusin would never enter the kitchen. Now that the whole family was eating noodles cooked by Su Ching-sang, they were all surprised and a little touched, especially Li Qianxue. She had really done everything to please Su Chengwei. She tried to learn cooking and cook for Su Chengwei. However, the final result was not satisfactory. The soup was either salty or not good enough. When the vegetables were stir-fried, they were either raw or burnt. She couldn't control the degree, but she didn't give up and always wanted to try again. In the end, she found that no matter how she tried, Su Chengwei wouldn't love her because of it, so she gave up. It's delicious. Su Yusin was the first to speak. It was obviously a very ordinary noodles, but he tasted like a feast. Really? Su Ching-sang looked at him, her eyes full of disbelief. Why don't I believe it? You're not happy that I praised you. It's delicious. Li Qianxue and Old Master Li were also full of praise. Su Ching-sang knew very well that it wasn't that the noodles she cooked were really delicious. It was just that Grandpa and the others gave her face. The family had a joyful and harmonious meal. That day, Su Ching-sang felt that time passed very quickly, but more than that, she was happy. She really wanted to share her feelings with Hu Jinyao at this time, so she went upstairs without even taking a shower. Instead, she called Hu Jinyao first. However, no one picked up Hu Jinyao's call. Su Ching-sang didn't think too much about it. She dialed again, but still no one picked up. Looking at the time, it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening. In the past, Hu Jinyao should have been home at this time. Su Ching-sang's first reaction was that the matter with Hu Jinyao's company should be very tricky. At least he couldn't handle it in a short time. Su Ching-sang wasn't unhappy. She was just a little worried and a little distressed. After sending a message to Hu Jinyao, telling him to take care of himself no matter how late he was, she put the phone aside. Since Su Ching-sang had returned to Lin City, she naturally had to find Shi Mengwan. Early in the morning, she sent a message to Shi Mengwan asking where she was. Knowing that she was back, Shi Mengwan couldn't be more happy. The two of them agreed on a time and place to meet. Su Ching-sang hung up the phone, lay on the bed, and casually browsed through the local news and WeChat public accounts. After Su Ching-sang went to Rong City, she followed a few local WeChat public accounts in Rong City. The local news she was reading now was naturally the local news of Rong City. They were all ordinary things. After casually browsing through a few, Su Ching-sang planned to close it. However, at this time, Rong City Online, which she followed, released today's news. The news was about a certain clubhouse. It said that a few rich second-generation rich kids in Rong City had a conflict with someone in a nightclub, then smashed the nightclub's venue and almost caused a riot. Su Ching-sang wasn't interested in this kind of news. These second-generation rich kids were just a little rich, but compared to real aristocratic families, they were far from being rich. She had also attended a few of Hu Jinyao's gatherings with his childhood friends, but none of his friends were like this. Just as she was about to close the news, her eyes fell on the accompanying photo of the news. There were two people in the photo, both of whom Su Ching-sang knew. One was the woman she had spoken to the other day, and the other was Hu Jinyao. Su Ching-sang looked at the photo for a moment, and her mind went blank for a moment. She thought she had seen it wrong. However, no matter how she looked at it, that person was Hu Jinyao. The other woman was the one she had met at the company. Su Ching-sang read the news again. Because the news about the other two rich kids was relatively big, mobile phones were now popular. She only browsed through the news, and not only did she find the photos of the two rich kids fighting, but she also found the video of the fight on the local portal. In the video, Su Qing didn't pay attention to the scene of a group of people fighting. She only stared at Hu Jinyao and the woman sitting not far away. From the video, it could be seen that the woman had been sitting close to Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao didn't push her away. Not only did he not push her away, but he also reached out to help her when the woman was about to get up. Then, the woman left for a while and came back. When she came back, she threw herself into Hu Jinyao's arms. The video ended here. Su Qing watched the video again, and her expression was a little ugly. Of course, she was willing to believe Hu Jinyao, and she also believed that he must have a reason to go to that kind of place with that woman. But she thought of Hu Jinyao's hand on that woman's body, and the way that woman threw herself at Hu Jinyao. Su Qing suddenly became angry. Even if she had misunderstood, couldn't Hu Jinyao stay away from that woman? She was angry. So she took out her phone and called Hu Jinyao without thinking. Hu Jinyao didn't answer the first time, and only answered the second time. Qing sang. Hu Jinyao's voice sounded a little hoarse, as if he hadn't slept well. Su Qing could hear it, and her heart ached a little. Her determination to find Hu Jinyao and ask him didn't decrease at all, but her expression became a lot calmer. Chapter 520. No, Hu Jinyao didn't expect Xiao Hong to lie to him. He did not appear at Blue Night at all yesterday. They called Xiao Hong, but he didn't pick up. Later, Ding Qing used her phone to call Xiao Hong. Xiao Hong didn't answer, but sent her a message. He said that he didn't want to go to jail and that he saw the police when he was coming. It turned out that the fight between the playboys had attracted someone to report to the police. Xiao Hong thought that Hu Jinyao had sent the police to arrest him, so he didn't show up. Hu Jinyao didn't expect such a misunderstanding. He gestured for Ding Qing to comfort Xiao Hong. Ding Qing kept assuring him that those policemen weren't coming for Xiao Hong, so that he could calm down. In the end, Xiao Hong agreed to give Hu Jinyao and the others another chance, but he couldn't tell Ding Qing the exact location until tonight. Because of this, the three of them had wasted their time yesterday. Ding Qing was especially angry. She kept accusing Xiao Hong of breaking his promise. She seemed to be more nervous than the boss. Is the problem very difficult? If Hu Jinyao was like this, the problem must be very tricky. Su Qing's tone carried a hint of worry. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. That's good. Su Qing couldn't help but ask, Jinyao, it was Saturday yesterday. Did you go to see Grandpa? Yes. Grandpa also asked me to tell you to send his regards. Oh, Su Qing believed him. So you didn't go out at night? You live in the old mansion? Just as Hu Jinyao was about to answer, the computer in front of him alerted him that a new email had arrived. He opened the mailbox and casually replied, Yes, I live in the old house. In fact, when Hu Jinyao stayed in the company yesterday, he had been discussing with Yang Wenchang and the others what they should do if Xiao Hong insisted on selling the confidential information to a rival company. Hu Jinyao always planned for the worst. He hoped that things would develop in a good direction. However, if the other party didn't keep their promise, he could arrest Xiao Hong or sue the other party's company. However, all of these things would bring negative consequences to Tianyu Group. Either way, Hu Jinyao needed to think of a way to deal with it. The most ideal outcome would be to find Xiao Hong and retrieve the secret. Minimize the loss. In the worst-case scenario, Xiao Hong would betray his company. At that time, both sides would perish together. Xiao Hong and his rival company wouldn't have a good ending, but Tianyu would still suffer heavy losses. Su Qing clenched her fists. She blinked and suddenly realized that Hu Jinyao was lying. He was lying to himself. Are you in the company now? Have you had breakfast? I ate it. Hu Jinyao read the contents of the email. His eyebrows were knitted together so tightly that a mosquito could be squeezed between his eyebrows. Jinyao. Su Qing told herself not to be paranoid and to trust him. Did you really stay at the old house last night? Yeah. Hu Jinyao moved the mouse and scrolled down. Su Qing pursed her lips and added, I haven't been home for 2 weeks. Did your mother say anything? What can she say? Hu Jinyao stared at the photos in the email. No matter what she says, I'll just ignore it. That's true. Su Qing didn't ask anymore. She could tell that Hu Jinyao's attitude was perfunctory. Then you go back to your work. I'll go shopping with Mengwan later. Okay. Hu Jinyao was about to hang up. He thought for a moment and added, if you want to stay in Lin City for a few more days with your mother, ask for leave. I can talk to the hospital for you. Of course, he knew that Su Qing and Li Qianxue hadn't known each other for a long time. He also wanted to spend more time with the Li family. However, Su Qing thought of something else. Okay, I got it. Su Qing didn't want to think about Hu Jinyao like that, but she couldn't help it. He was thinking that it would be more convenient for him to do something when she wasn't at home. Was that so? After hanging up, Su Qing thought about it. She was willing to believe Hu Jinyao, but she still couldn't help but call the old house of the Hu family. Coincidentally, the person who answered the phone was Old Master Hu. Grandpa, Qing. Old Master Hu recognized Su Qing's voice almost immediately. He was very happy to receive a call from his granddaughter-in-law. He didn't notice Zhang Yiqin, who came to visit this morning, because his ears moved slightly when he heard the two words. However, that was all. In the end, he picked up the tea in front of him and sipped it gently. His expression didn't change at all. Well, Grandpa, I just wanted to say hello to you. I can't come back to accompany you this weekend. It's okay. I heard from Jinyao. He said it's your grandpa's birthday. Remember to say hello to Yongfeng for me. Okay, I will. My grandpa misses you too. He asked me to say hello to you. He's too polite. He has a lot of things to do at home these days. When he's free, he asked him to come to Rong City to play. Okay, I'll tell Grandpa. After saying this, Su Qing said casually, Jinyao has been very busy recently. He always listens to you. You must talk to him and ask him not to live in the company. It's easy to catch a cold, and he can't sleep well. He sleeps in the company? Then I'll talk to him later. Speaking of which, I told him to pay more attention to his health when he came last time. There's no end to the company's business. Old Master Hu was also a smart person. What couldn't he see? In fact, he also knew that the Hui Yifan brothers had been doing a lot recently. However, they were all his grandchildren, so he didn't want to interfere too much. More importantly, he believed in Hu Jinyao's ability and that he would handle it well. Yes, he's always busy with work and doesn't come back to accompany Grandpa. He hasn't come back to see you for a few days, right? It's okay. I know he's busy. When he's done, he can come to see me again. Su Qing's heart slightly tightened. What else did she not understand? Hu Jinyao didn't go back to the old house yesterday. He was really lying, and he really lied to her. After talking with Old Master Hu for a while, she finally hung up the phone. Su Qing sat by the bed and once again looked at the video of the fight. She didn't want to think badly of Hu Jinyao. But why would Hu Jinyao lie to her? Even if he told her directly that he went to a nightclub with that woman, she wouldn't be angry. She believed that he did everything for a reason. However, no matter how much she trusted him, she wouldn't like him lying to her. Some things couldn't be explained clearly over the phone. He could only ask when they met. No matter what, she was willing to give him a chance to explain. She was also willing to believe that Hu Jinyao was not a man who cheated in his marriage. She put her phone aside. It was almost time for the appointment with Shi Mengwan. She could only put it aside for now. Everything could wait until she returned to Rong City. Chapter 521. Ding Qing hung up the phone and looked at Hu Jinyao and Yang Wenchang. Xiao Hong said tonight at 9 o'clock. We'll meet at Charm of Night. Because of what happened before, Xiao Hong didn't trust Hu Jinyao anymore. Now, he was only willing to contact Ding Qing. Hu Jinyao furrowed his brows. Why did Xiao Hong always choose a nightclub or a nightclub? President Hua. Ding Qing looked at Hu Jinyao. She was eager to solve the problem. Why don't I go tonight? No need. I'll go with you. Hu Jinyao glanced at Ding Qing while speaking. Is your foot okay? Yesterday, Ding Qing's foot had been sprained by a small stone. Later, when they were fighting in Blue Night, she accidentally tripped on a piece of glass that was thrown on the ground. Although he reached out to hold her in time, her foot was still swollen. Ding Qing's injury was a work-related injury. As the boss, Hu Jinyao naturally had to care about his employee's injury. Thank you for your concern, President Hua. My foot is fine. Don't worry. I'm wearing a pair of flats today. I won't be a burden to you again, Ding Qing said with a guilty look on her face. What happened yesterday has nothing to do with you. It was an accident. Your foot is injured. You shouldn't go today. I'll go with Yang Wenchang. But I'm the one who contacted Xiao Hong. Ding Qing tried her best to persuade him. President Hua, I'm the one who contacted Xiao Hong, and I'm the one who agreed to meet him. If he finds out that I'm not there, he might think that we lied to him again. That'll be really troublesome. President Hua, Secretary Ding has a point. Yang Wenchang believed that it was impossible to stop Ding Qing from getting involved. Besides, Ding Qing is a woman. It'll be easier for Xiao Hong to let his guard down. Yeah, I'll go in first, and I'll text you when I see Xiao Hong. Ding Qing's suggestion was good. Hu Jinyao thought for a while, then agreed. All right, you can go with us. But you don't have to rush to ask Xiao Hong for the thing. Comfort him first. Let him calm down. I know what I'm doing, President Hua. As long as Xiao Hong shows up, I'm confident that he'll let down his guard and be willing to talk to us. All right, it was the weekend, and there was no one else in the office. After the three of them discussed what to do, they each went to make their own arrangements. Hu Jinyao thought about the series of things that had happened recently and felt as if he had overlooked something important. Charm of the Night was also a nightclub, but it wasn't as big as Blue Night. Charm of Night's location was also a bit more remote than Blue Night's. Hu Jinyao knew that Xiao Hong didn't want to run into the police again. Just like the day before, Ding Qing was responsible for contacting Xiao Hong. Then she walked into Charm of Night. Hu Jinyao followed Ding Qing. Because Ding Qing's foot was injured, Hu Jinyao helped her up the stairs again. Thank you, President Hua, Ding Qing said in a low voice. But you don't have to help me. I'm afraid that if Xiao Hong sees it, he might think that our relationship is different. You think too much. Hu Jinyao didn't even blink or look at Ding Qing. Xiao Hong knows that I'm married. I won't think in that direction. That's good. Ding Qing seemed to be relieved. Hu Jinyao finally glanced at her and said, What? Are you afraid that Xiao Hong might misunderstand you? I'm not afraid that Xiao Hong might misunderstand me. I'm afraid that others might misunderstand me. Ding Qing's voice was very low. I just met a nice guy, and I'm planning to date him. I don't want him to misunderstand me before we even start dating. Hu Jinyao nodded. He relaxed a little because of Ding Qing's words. Yeah, it's okay. If he really misunderstands you, I can explain for you. Thank you in advance, President Hua. Ding Qing's voice sounded cheerful, which made the tense moment a lot more relaxed. The benefits of Tianya Group were quite good. Not only were the benefits good, but Hu Jinyao wasn't a person who would mistreat his employees. Zhang Yang, who had been working for him, was excellent at his job. This time, his wife was having a baby, and he wanted to take a vacation. Hu Jinyao immediately agreed. As for Ding Qing, Hu Jinyao approved of her hard work in the past 2 days. She was a good subordinate, and that was all. The two of them entered Charm of Night together. In order to avoid a repeat of the previous incident, the two of them chose a corner and sat down. Hu Jinyao sat down and looked around. This place was noisier than Blue Night, and there were more people here. If Xiao Hong showed up in a place like this, it would be easier for him to get away. The strange feeling in his heart came again, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong at the moment. President Hua, do you think Xiao Hong will come today? Hearing Ding Qing's words, Hu Jinyao glanced at her and shook his head. I'm not sure, but I have a feeling that he will come. Today was Sunday, and tomorrow is Monday. He had to report to the managers about the progress of the project. Recently, Hui Yifan had been doing a lot of things. If Hu Jinyao didn't want Hui Yifan to be more arrogant, he couldn't make any more mistakes. Ding Qing stopped talking. She seemed to be nervous as well. She took out her phone and was about to call Xiao Hong again, but Hu Jinyao stopped her. You don't have to call him anymore. Hu Jinyao's expression was a little cold. If he doesn't come, you won't be able to do anything. If he comes, if you keep calling him, he will think that we need to beg him. No matter how bad the situation was, Hu Jinyao didn't want to lose the initiative. He was lucky today. Xiao Hong finally showed up. After he walked in, He walked around for a long time, then walked to where Hu Jinyao and Ding Qing were sitting. Hu Jinyao was sitting inside, while Ding Qing was sitting outside. That was why Qiao Hong didn't see Hu Jinyao at first. When he saw Hu Jinyao, he wanted to leave, but he found that Yang Wenchong had come in and was following him. Yang Wenchong blocked his way, so Qiao Hong couldn't leave. He had no choice but to sit down in front of them. This is not a good place to talk. I've booked a private room upstairs. Let's talk there, said Yang Wenchong. Hu Jinyao nodded. Qiao Hong knew that he couldn't leave now, so he followed them upstairs. After entering the room, Qiao Hong glared at Ding Qing. Miss Ding, you broke your promise. Qiao Hong, I don't think I ever said that I came here alone. Although Ding Qing said that, she felt a little guilty. Qiao Hong didn't say anything. He stood there looking very upset. Qiao Hong, you know that, right? What you're doing now is against the law. This project of Tianyu Group was very important. Hu Jinyao was in charge of it from the beginning to the end. He was the only one who knew how much he valued this project. All the employees who worked on this project had to sign confidentiality agreements. What Qiao Hong did today was against the law. Hu Jinyao knew that, and so did Qiao Hong. As expected, when Qiao Hong heard Hu Jinyao's words, he immediately weakened. His voice trembled a little. President Hua, I know I'm wrong, but I had no choice. Where is it? Hu Jinyao didn't want to hear Qiao Hong talk about his so-called difficulties. Many people in this world lived hard lives, but not everyone would choose to take the unorthodox path. I didn't bring it with me. Qiao Hong was obviously a little guilty when he said that. Why would I bring such an important thing with me? Hu Jinyao curled up the corner of his mouth and stared at Qiao Hong coldly. His voice was very low. Your condition? I want money. Qiao Hong was shocked by Hu Jinyao's imposing manner. His voice even softened. How much? 1 million. Qiao Hong wasn't greedy. His girlfriend needed hundreds of thousands of yuan to get a kidney transplant, and he had to wait for the source of the kidney. In the meantime, he had to receive all kinds of treatments. In fact, 1 million yuan might not be enough to solve his problem. 2 million. Hu Jinyao was quite generous. I could transfer the money to you right now, but you have to take us to get the thing first. Qiao Hong rubbed his hands and looked at Hu Jinyao. I have another condition. What? I want to go back to work in Tianyu Group. Impossible. Hu Jinyao's expression was cold, leaving no room for negotiation. You should have read the company's employee rules. I will never let you go back to work in the company. Thinking of the good benefits of Tianyu Group, Qiao Hong hesitated for a moment. I just want to go back to work. I said it's impossible. Hu Jinyao released his aura. He just sat there, but he gave people the feeling that he was a cheetah staring at its prey. Qiao Hong, you don't need me to remind you of the consequences of what you did, do you? If I call the police now and send you to the police station, your life will be over. Of course, Qiao Hong knew that. He felt the sweat on his back. You don't dare to do that. If you call the police, I will ask my friend to give the thing to Anshu and Company. Then you will suffer a great loss. Really? Hu Jinyao smiled. He took out his phone and pressed the number 101, but he didn't make the call. Instead, he looked at Qiao Hong with certainty. You can try. What will happen if I call the police now? Qiao Hong didn't speak, but Hu Jinyao took the phone and stood in front of Qiao Hong in 2 steps. Did you think that I didn't make any preparations before coming to find you? Hu Jinyao was 188 meters tall, much taller than Qiao Hong. He stood in front of him and released his aura. His eyes were sharp. Yes, you can give the thing to Anshuan, and I can guarantee that they will want it from you. But if you give it to me, I will call the police. You have signed a confidentiality agreement. You can't escape from jail. And Anshuan's people dare to buy the confidential documents of Tianyu Group. What do you think will happen to them? Chapter 522. Hu Jinyao put his phone away and said, Qiao Hong, you're a smart man. I admit that you've contributed a lot to this project. I'll give you 2 million today. Take the money and give me the stuff. As for going back to Tianyu, don't even think about it. After you get the money, you're not allowed to work in the same industry for 2 years. Why should I trust you? You have no choice but to trust me now. Hua Jiniao's voice was extremely cold. If I want to ban you now, believe it or not, you won't be able to find a job in the whole of China. Xiao Hong remained silent. He knew that Hua Jiniao was capable of doing that. He struggled to make his last request. I want a bank transfer, not a check. Okay, I'll transfer 1 million to you now. I'll give you the rest after you give me the stuff. Let's go now. Without further ado, Hua Jiniao made Xiao Hong agree to his conditions with a few words, half threatening and half tempting. Neither Yang Wenchang nor Ding Qing had a chance to say anything since he started talking. Yang Wenchang was fine. He had worked for Hua Jiniao for a long time, and he had seen Hua Jiniao's fierce side before. However, this was the first time that Ding Qing had seen Hua Jiniao like this. She sat next to Hua Jiniao and had a strange feeling in her heart. She no longer came to Tianyu for some purpose. She was simply Hua Jiniao's subordinate now. She saw a completely different side of her boss. She looked at Hua Jiniao deeply, and her heart was filled with emotions that even she couldn't suppress. She clearly knew that the emotional change could be called a heartbeat. When they returned to the company, it was already past midnight. They had followed Xiao Hong to the place he told them to take out the stuff. They didn't expect Xiao Hong to be so bold as to put the stuff in the safe box of a suite in a 4-star hotel. Hua Jiniao didn't search Xiao Hong's home, nor did he send people to the hotel to look for him. He probably didn't expect Xiao Hong to be so bold. However, he didn't register under his own name. Even if he sent people to search all the hotels in Rong City, they wouldn't know which hotel Xiao Hong was staying in. Now that the stuff was back, Hua Jiniao kept it safe again. He turned around and looked at his two subordinates. There was no need to mention Yang Wenchang. After following him for so many years, he was experienced in everything he did. He knew what he was thinking the most. Whatever it was, it had already been done before the order had been given. As for Ding Qing, although she hadn't been here for long, she had been doing well in the past few days. You've all worked hard today. Go back and rest early. Hua Jiniao rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He felt that things had been solved too easily. Xiao Hong's compromise was within his expectations. He had already blocked all of Xiao Hong's escape routes. 2 million was nothing to him. But to him, this matter had been solved too easily, and it felt surreal. Yang Wenchang stood there, not in a hurry to leave. Hua Jiniao glanced at him, then turned to look at Ding Qing. Secretary Ding, you can go back and rest first. All right. Ding Qing knew that Yang Wenchang had something to say, so she didn't linger. She lowered her head and quickly left. However, after she left, she did not leave immediately. Closing the door, she pressed her ear against the door. The soundproofing in Hua Jiniao's office was so good that she couldn't hear anything. In the end, she had no choice but to leave. In the office, Yang Wenchang sat across from Hua Jiniao. Neither of them had rested well for the past few days, and neither of them looked well. President Hua, I have a feeling that something is wrong with this matter. Tell me about it. Hua Jiniao had the same feeling, but he also wanted to hear Yang Wenchang's opinion. I just feel that it's too simple. Yang Wenchang didn't believe that Xiao Hong had gone through all this trouble just for 2 million. They both knew the value of this document. More importantly, if Xiao Hong had really sold it to a rival company, even if they went to court and sued the rival company, Tianyu Group would still suffer a great loss. Also, it's too easy to solve. Today, Xiao Hong had agreed to the terms without much struggle. On the surface, it seemed that he had done so under Hua Jiniao's pressure, but in fact, it felt weird. Hua Jiniao looked at Yang Wenchang. Yang Wenchang was indeed his most valued assistant. Go and find out who Xiao Hong has been in contact with before. Or, apart from the 2 million I gave him, if there was any other unknown income in his bank account. It doesn't have to be the bank account. There are other accounts as well. Check them all. Yes. Yang Wenchang nodded and turned to leave. Hua Jiniao stopped him. You don't have to do it now. It's the same tomorrow. One more thing. Not only do we have to investigate him, but we also have to investigate his family. Xiao Hong wasn't stupid. He might not use his own account to do something like that. Yang Wenchang immediately understood what he meant. Hua Jiniao waved his hand. All right, go back to sleep. Don't come tomorrow morning. Have a good rest at home. Looking into Hua Jinyao's tired eyes, Yang Wenchang knew that he was the most tired one. President Hua, I don't need to rest tomorrow. You, on the other hand, have a tough battle to fight tomorrow. Don't worry. I know. Hua Jinyao sat up straight. His eyes were sharp. Those people want to see me make a fool of myself. I'll make a fool of myself first. Yang Wenchang lowered his eyes. Only then did he feel relieved. He quickly walked out. Hua Jinyao stayed in the office. He didn't rush home. He was still thinking about all the problems he had encountered during this period of time. Then he connected the dots one by one and found the key point. Su Qingsang walked out of the airport and tightened her coat. It was the end of spring, but the weather in Rome City was still a bit cold. Compared with the warm Lin City, it was much colder here. She didn't rush to the taxi lane. Hua Jinyao said that he would send someone to pick her up. Su Qingsang just had to wait here. She called Hua Jinyao before she got on the plane. Hua Jinyao asked her why she didn't stay in Lin City for a few more days. Not only him, but Shi Mingwan and the Li family also wanted her to stay for a few more days. She wanted to stay too, but the thought of Hua Jinyao going to a nightclub with another woman made her feel very uncomfortable. Plus, she had something to do at the hospital, so she refused their invitation to stay. She only said that she would fly back to Lin City to visit them when she had time. She took the earliest flight of the day back to Rome City. However, as soon as she pushed her luggage out of the ramp, she saw someone who shouldn't be there. Chapter 5:23. Su Qingsang's eyebrows twitched when she saw the woman. She immediately thought of what the two of them had done in the video. Su Qingsang stopped for a second and stood there without moving. His hand on the luggage handle tightened because of this. It was only for a few seconds, and she quickly relaxed her strength. Then, she smiled and watched the woman walk towards her. Su Qingsang looked at the woman from head to toe as she walked towards her. She was wearing a white Givenchy trench coat with a belt and a pair of Prada suede boots. Her hair was tied up, and there was a faint smile on her face. The lavender eyeshadow made her look even more charming and seductive. Su Qingsang had to admit that the woman in front of her was indeed exquisite. More importantly, she clearly knew the advantages of her appearance, and she made full use of it. She was different from Hua Jinyao, who always wore flat shoes because she had to perform surgeries. The woman's high heels made her look much taller than Hua Jinyao, which made her look even more imposing. Ding Qing walked towards Su Qingsang step by step. Her face was calm, and her smile was appropriate. Su Qingsang watched her approach her step by step. Her eyes darkened a little, but soon returned to normal. "Hello, Mrs. Hua." Ding Qing walked up to Su Qingsang and said, "I'm Ding Qing, President Hua's secretary. President Hua asked me to pick you up." In fact, Hua Jinyao had a meeting in the morning, and he had arranged for Yang Wenchang to pick him up. However, Ding Qing happened to overhear it. Yang Wenchang had found out what Hua Jinyao had asked him to look into yesterday, so Yang Wenchang was a little hesitant. Ding Qing offered to pick Su Qingsang up. "I met Mrs. Hua when she came to the company. I know her. Don't worry. I will bring Mrs. Hua back safely." Okay. Hua Jinyao had witnessed Ding Qing's abilities recently, so he didn't think too much about it and agreed to let her pick Hua Jinyao up. Now, she stood in front of Su Qingsang with a faint smile on her face. Her red lips were delicate, and she reached out her hand to Su Qingsang. Her hands were different from the paleness of her palms, which were caused by the disinfectant she had been using all the time in the lab or on the operating table in the hospital. Her slender fingers were painted with crimson nail polish, and there were even beautiful flower patterns drawn on them. Su Qingsang glanced at the man's hand and met his eyes. He was still calm, as if the provocation in the eyes of the person who said those words to her last time was just an illusion. "Hello, Mrs. Hua." She didn't reach out her hand for the first time, but Ding Qing was very polite. She reached out her hand a little bit more. "I'm Ding Qing. President Hua asked me to pick you up." Su Qingsang looked at Ding Qing's hand, then finally took it. It was soft. She held it for a moment, then let it go. "Where's Hua Jinyao?" "President Hua has an important meeting, so he can't leave." While speaking, Ding Qing took a step forward and was about to pull Su Qingsang's luggage. Mr. Yang is very busy, too. I'm the only one who has free time. So, I'm here to pick you up. She pulled Su Qingsang's luggage closer to her eyes and turned to look at her with a smile. Mrs. Hui, you don't mind, do you? Of course. Su Qingsang blinked and said, I have to thank you. You're welcome. This is my job. While speaking, Ding Qing pointed outside and said, Mrs. Hua, my car is parked over there. Let's go this way. Okay. Su Qingsang nodded. She didn't take her luggage from Ding Qing's hands, but walked quietly beside her. She didn't have much luggage, just one suitcase. Before she came here, Li Qinxue and old Master Li had picked out a lot of nice things for her to bring back as gifts. So, Su Qingsang had 2 suitcases. Seeing that Ding Qing was pulling 2 suitcases on each side, Su Qingsang said something. Miss Ding, I'll take one. It's okay. We're almost at my car anyway. It's not far. Ding Qing was wearing a pair of high heels, but her steps were still steady. Su Qingsang glanced at her feet, then calmly withdrew her gaze. Everyone had their own strengths and characteristics. She wouldn't feel bad just because Ding Qing's makeup was better than hers, and she didn't look as smart and capable as Ding Qing. The two of them left the airport hall and walked to the underground parking lot. Ding Qing put her luggage in the trunk, then walked around to open the car door for Su Qingsang. Mrs. Hua, please. Su Qingsang slightly frowned, but soon smiled and turned to look at her. Thank you. Su Qingsang didn't pretend to be polite. She got in the car directly. She watched Ding Qing walk to the other side of the car, get in, and start the car. From the beginning until now, Ding Qing didn't seem to have any problems. However, Su Qingsang wouldn't forget the words that Ding Qing had said to her earlier. She wouldn't forget the way that Ding Qing threw herself at Hu Jinyao in the video. She didn't want to think badly of people, but she didn't think that people were good either, especially Ding Qing. She had every reason to suspect that this woman had an ulterior motive. To put it more directly, she had an ulterior motive towards Hu Jinyao. She said that she was Hu Jinyao's secretary. So Hu Jinyao's secretary and Hu Jinyao met each other every day. A man and a woman, as well as a superior and a subordinate, spent at least 8 hours a day together. Su Qingsang blinked her eyes and stopped thinking. She didn't want to suspect Hu Jinyao. No matter how confused she was, she would wait until she saw Hu Jinyao and ask him herself. Su Qingsang had woken up early in the morning to catch a flight, so she was very sleepy. However, Ding Qing was driving, so she couldn't rest in the car. She was still thinking about the video and the scene where Ding Qing and Hu Jinyao hugged each other. She almost blurted out and questioned the woman, but she held back. Ding Qing didn't mind that she didn't speak. Mrs. Hua, I didn't have a chance to talk to you when you came to the company last time. In fact, when the girls in our company found out that Mr. Hua was married, many female employees were heartbroken because of it. Ding Qing's eyes met Su Qingsang's in the rearview mirror. Ding Qing seemed to be complimenting Hu Jinyao, but Su Qingsang curved her lips. I don't think so. 1/3 of the female employees in Tianyu Group are heartbroken. Who's going to do the work then? Hee. Ding Qing laughed a little exaggeratedly. Mrs. Hua, you're so humorous. I'm not exactly humorous. I'm just telling the truth. Su Qingsang looked calm, but with a trace of certainty. I believe that the people in Hu Jinyao's company wouldn't be so unprofessional. Don't you think so, Miss Ding? Ding Qing wasn't stupid. Of course, she understood what she meant. For a moment, the smile on her face faded a little. She was a little embarrassed. However, the embarrassment only lasted for a moment. She looked straight ahead, as if she was driving seriously. However, she added something because of what she had said just now. Of course, the success of Tianyu Group is inseparable from the hard work of all the employees in the company. Su Qingsang nodded as if she agreed with Ding Qing. I think so too. So, I don't think that the female employees will be heartbroken because of Hu Jinyao's marriage. Or, do you think that everyone else is heartbroken because of Hu Jinyao's marriage? Mrs. Hua, you really like to joke. Ding Qing didn't expect that Su Qingsang would give her another soft rebuff. I'm not among the female employees who are heartbroken because of President Hua. After all, I have a boyfriend. As for why you know about the other female employees, Mrs. Hua, I can understand. As the company grows, there will always be more people who gossip. Yes, I believe you. Wherever there are people, there will be gossip. But I believe in Hua Jinyao's employees more than I do. If Hua Jinyao can't even handle such a small matter, and his employees lose their jobs because of his marriage, Hua Jinyao doesn't need to be the president anymore. Don't you think so? Ding Qing stopped talking. This was the first time she had a face-to-face confrontation with Su Qingsang. She had thought that Hua Jinyao was just a soft rabbit, but now she found out that she was a hedgehog. You're right, Mrs. Hua. President Hua is very capable and resourceful. I also believe that under his leadership, our employees will be able to follow Tianyu Group to a higher level. Miss Ding. Su Qingsang leaned against the back seat of the car. The heater in the car was very warm. She didn't take off her coat, but she still felt a little warm. President Hua isn't here, so you don't have to flatter him in front of me. Mrs. Hua, you're joking again. I don't think it's flattery. Don't you like people praising President Hua's ability? I don't like it. As Su Qingsang spoke, she smiled faintly. In my heart, Hua Jinyao is good at everything. So, I really don't need to listen to others praising him. Su Qingsang smiled. Ding Qing only glanced at the smile in her eyes and the sweetness on her face through the rearview mirror. She just felt that the smile on her face was a little dazzling. Why did Su Qingsang smile so sweetly? It was because of Hua Jinyao. Without Hua Jinyao, what would Su Qingsang be? Nothing at all. Ding Qing lowered her eyes. She knew that she had been a little too impatient today. She should have calmed down a little. However, when she thought of Hua Jinyao, a charm of night last night, she suddenly couldn't help it. It didn't matter. There was still a long way to go. She would be with Hua Jinyao every day. She didn't believe that she wouldn't have a chance at all. She didn't say another word. She stared at the road ahead and focused on driving. Su Qingsang didn't speak either. She looked at Ding Qing's back and thought about what she would do next. On the way here, she finally understood that Ding Qing didn't seem to be very obvious, but in fact, she was trying to provoke her with every word she said. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.